Hello, ET Let's Talk community. As you know by now, I'm Kosta Makreas, and I welcome you to our Danny Sheehan seminar on cosmic humanity in a post-ET disclosure world. Gratitude to all of you who are joining us today from all over the world. We promise you an intellectually stimulating discussion and presentation today. As you may know, Danny Sheehan has a long and illustrious career representing the American people while prosecuting famous American political scandals of the last century. For example, he litigated the Pentagon Papers, the Watergate scandal, the Iran-Contra affair, the Karen Silkwood murder, and more. Now we're very fortunate that Danny's pursuing his lifelong interest in extraterrestrial life and how it relates to us, and is willing to share his thoughts, ruminations on where we're headed in that area. Danny addresses the topic of cosmic humanity. For our part in the ET Let's Talk community, we're contacting and communicating with galactic civilizations as we prepare for the time when we as a species will openly interact with them. Our movement is really humanity becoming cosmic, and that leads us into, well, what happens in the post-disclosure world that we're working to get, and that's where Danny has put a lot of thought and wants to present to you the results of his thoughts, and hopefully you all will appreciate the stimulation and increase your vision too. So join me in welcoming Danny to ET Let's Talk webinar.
Here we're in Santa Cruz, California right now. I know that there's been a lot of discussion going on about what the state of affairs are with regard to the so-called disclosure issue with our United States government, and what we've been doing here in California at the New Paradigm Institute to participate in this. And so I wanted to bring everybody up to date on that. That there's sort of a general substantive presentation that I want to make, and then there's a sort of a procedural discussion we want to have, as I say, about what the status of things are on this. As you were talking in the lead up to the program here, there have been some rather extraordinary announcements made in the past week by NASA, in which normally extremely conservative people at NASA and around the country and in the news media have actually been discussing what appears to them to be artificial, intentionally constructed structures orbiting a star nearby our galaxy here. Now, it's really interesting to watch how the people around the country are responding to this. As of this point, I think most of the people in the country are not aware of how important something like that is, to actually have people of this type of a conservative nature being willing to talk about something as straightforwardly as this. But for example, one of the NASA officials said, look, the very last resort is for us ever to suggest that some phenomenon that we're picking up is actually evidence of extraterrestrial intelligence, but it's very difficult for us to attribute what we're seeing to anything else. That's the present communications coming out of them. This is something that we've talked about in the past, because I've mentioned on previous webcasts with us that my own personal belief after 40 years in this field is that the method by means of which the institutions in our country, that is NASA and the federal government, the president and the White House, the United States Congress and others, the process by means of which they're going to be step by step coming to acknowledge the existence of extraterrestrial intelligence is not by acknowledging that they've been lying for the last 45 years or 60 years about evidence that there are actually extraterrestrial beings coming to our planet and interacting with individuals, which accounts for these many thousands of stories that we're all quite familiar with about individual people having contact with individual in groups of extraterrestrial beings. or seeing their craft flying through the sky and landing at a distance, or interacting with aircraft from our planet. But rather, they're going to be using this window of opportunity that's been presented now by our putting Hubble, the Hubble Space Telescope, up into orbit, and more recently the Kepler Planet Hunter. They're going to be using this window of saying that, oh look, the Kepler has discovered the existence of actual planets. Now, for the first time in history, actually it was Hubble that has now proven that planets actually exist, because the scientific, logical, positivist worldview that has been employed by the academy among our human family has been that they refuse to acknowledge anything to be true unless they can taste it or touch it or measure it or weigh it, or that they can verify it repeatedly over and over and over again. There are various standards that are used for putting into place in operation the scientific, logical, materialist paradigm. But what they've been saying is that unless some phenomenon falls into those tests, meets those tests, that they simply not only refuse to acknowledge that it's true, they will go so far as to say that it's not true, that it just doesn't exist until it comes into our zone of perception. That's been a fundamental problem in this particular area, because the reality of our entire universe has been restricted to that which can be actually experienced by the limited technology that we have developed at any particular stage in our human evolution. And so that there is an actual process by means of which reality itself is limited to just what we're able to measure and to be able to see through our technology. And now that that is increasing, the scientific community is now actually saying that reality itself is expanding, as though that hadn't been there all the time, and they were willing to acknowledge that we simply weren't able to perceive it. That's where we are now. And because of our having recently, or comparatively recently, launched the Hubble Space Telescope and the Kepler and others, and have increased our technological capacity to perceive through our five senses, and the supplements to our five senses of increased visual ability and increased audio ability, and taking into our technology the data that's emitted by reality. Now that that's happening, they're acknowledging that reality seems to be considerably grander than they had insisted upon prior to that time. Another example of this is that for the past 50 years, 75 years, the scientific community has been saying that their best judgment is that there are 100 billion stars in our Milky Way galaxy, because that's what they were able to perceive from on planet through our atmosphere with our limited visual technology that we had developed. And once they got the Hubble Space Telescope out beyond our atmosphere, they were starting to say that, oh look, we're able to see a lot more stars now that are in our galaxy. So now there appear to be like 200 billion stars in our galaxy. Now that the Kepler has been up and the Hubble has been redirected, they now are acknowledging that there now very much appears to be at least 400 billion stars in our Milky Way galaxy. And the Kepler is now able to recognize that some 20% of these stars, these now 400 billion plus stars, 1 out of every 5 of them appear to have planets around them, so that there are some 100 billion star systems. And because of the increased technological capacity of Kepler, they're now able to recognize that approximately 1 in 5 of those star systems actually have planets in what they've now begun to refer to as the Goldilocks zone. That these planets are not too close and not too far from their star, and so therefore it's not too hot and not too cold, and that therefore there may be liquid water on these planets. And they postulate that liquid water is one of the sine qua nons, or the conditions precedent to life actually developing. Now they say that because they understand that that was a condition precedent for life developing on our planet. So they extrapolate from that and believe now that there are some approximately 100 billion star systems in our Milky Way galaxy that have Goldilocks planets that may well have life on them. And that's just in our galaxy, our Milky Way galaxy. Now the same type of exponential increase in the scope and content of reality itself also applies to our universe in general. That there had been some speculation when they believed that there were approximately 100 billion stars in our Milky Way galaxy, that there were approximately 100 billion galaxies. And so that now that they're recognizing that there appear to be something more like between 400 and 500 billion stars in our Milky Way galaxy, they're now starting to recognize that there may be a comparable number of galaxies. And so the latest figures are that there appear to be a number of so-called Goldilocks planets in our universe that appears to be a 1 with 33 zeros attached to that. So that they don't even quite know what number to attribute to that. It's a sextillion number of these Goldilocks planets. Then they're now engaged in the process of starting to extrapolate with those numbers to try to determine what percentage of those Goldilocks planets are likely to have life, at least in some microscopic form, existing, and what type of descendant life there may be on a number of these planets and in a more complex form than simply microscopic life. So you see that there is a process that is underway now just in the last 10 years, pursuant to which the scientific community in our human family is now starting to more and more rapidly acknowledge that it is not only highly probable, but virtually a scientific certainty that life exists elsewhere in our universe, and indeed very likely as well right here inside our own Milky Way galaxy. And so that there's an ever increasing willingness now on the part of the official scientific community in our human family to acknowledge that more and more complex life almost certainly exists elsewhere in our universe and in our galaxy. So this is the process by means of which I personally believe that our human scientific community is going to be step by step acknowledging officially that other intelligent life exists elsewhere in our Milky Way galaxy and the rest of our universe. So that is the process that we're seeing actually unfolding in front of us just in this past decade. I remember actually in 2011, just 4 years ago, I was asked to address the International UFO Congress down in Scottsdale. And I was asked to communicate to the audience at that time what I believed the process was by means of which our U.S. government and our U.S. scientific community and our human families scientific community were going to be acknowledging the existence of extraterrestrial life. And I emphasized that I did not believe that there was going to be some kind of, sudden disclosure, official disclosure on the part of our government that they had in fact known about the existence of a highly intelligent and highly technologically developed extraterrestrial non-human species for the last 65 years. They weren't going to do that, that they were going to do this other thing that I've just talked about. They're going to be using the existence of the Hubble telescope and the Kepler and the others now, the Planck telescope, for example. They're going to be using these new technologies to pretend that their first scientific information confirming the existence of life elsewhere in our universe is coming through these means. And they have concluded that our human family is much more prepared psychologically and theologically and philosophically to slowly absorb this information coming in this particular manner. So that is the setting for the presentation that I want to make here this afternoon, because I want all of us who have been for many years in our audience. The members of our audience right now range from people that are probably, perhaps 80 years old, all the way down to younger people that are probably 15, 16 years old, who are watching this particular discussion we're having here today. All of our people need to readjust our previous wishes that somehow the human family's governments would rush in and acknowledge that they've been lying to us all of this time and have been concealing the fact that they've been aware of the fact that extraterrestrial beings have been coming and going to our planet and having direct contact with human beings and actually abducting some human beings and engaging in various forms of contact and communication with us. That we need to clearly and plainly set that aside and stop pressing on that expectation, because they have that door pretty well closed. They've lied on the record. They've fabricated evidence. There is some strong evidence to indicate that they've not only harassed individuals to stop them from communicating the reality that they've had experiences with extraterrestrial beings, but that they've actually undertaken to destroy the reputations of people who have tried to communicate this information to the rest of our human family. And so that they have the official structures of our American government and many other governments around the world have gotten themselves so wedged into a position in which they cannot acknowledge that they've been doing this. It's very unlikely that they're going to reverse themselves now. As we are aware, there are half a dozen countries that have in fact been exceptions to this, and they have attempted to try to open up their files and reveal the fact that a number of their military aircraft and other official structures of their government have encountered what they have come to believe are extraterrestrial vehicles and extraterrestrial beings. There's a small handful of those, but that still has not resulted in any major alteration of the official positions of the United Nations or the American government or anyone else. I'm sorry about that buzz. We're going to get that. Someone is actually cleaning the house while we're working here. What we need to do is readjust our expectations away from thinking that the official structures of our governments are going to change their position into, or at least change their position with regard to what the facts have been for the last 60 years. But we do believe that they're going to start changing their position on what's being discovered now. And so that I want to have a discussion about what changes we need to make in the way we conduct ourselves in the community that has believed for some time that extraterrestrial intelligence exists, and that indeed a set of very sophisticated non-human extraterrestrial civilizations actually exist right here in our Milky Way galaxy. So that I believe that what that we want to do is we want to begin a discussion that does not attempt to confront our American government anymore, or the United Nations, or other governmental structures, and try to continue to accuse them of malicious conduct in the past, and knowingly criminal conduct in some instances with regard to people who've been attempting to communicate information to them. Not because I don't think they deserve it, that they deserve that type of opprobrium and criticism, because I certainly am not an apologist for this type of conduct in the past. And unfortunately, virtually everybody who knows me and what I've been engaged in over the last 45 years of my legal practice realize that I'm in no way an apologist for any of that type of conduct in the past. And I have been quite successful in challenging some of that type of conduct in other areas, ranging all the way from participating in forcing the federal court system in the United States to allow the publication of the Pentagon Papers, which revealed the duplicity of the American government with regard to the Vietnam War, challenging the Iran-Contra illegal weapons supplies to the Contras by the Reagan and Bush administration, the killing of Karen Silkwood at the nuclear facility in Oklahoma, a lot of others, some dozen major actual conspiracies that had been undertaken on the part of official government circles. So I say that just to emphasize the fact that I'm certainly no apologist for their unlawful conduct in the past. And I do believe that very similar conduct has characterized their activities over the past some 60 years, or at least since 1947, so some 68 years now. So when I tell people that I think we should basically set aside the amount of energy that we keep putting into trying to incriminate them all for what they have done, that it's for our purposes and our reasons that we have to stop doing that, in my opinion. Whoever wants to continue to do that is perfectly fine with me. As I said, that those government officials certainly deserve that type of opprobrium, but I don't want us to waste our limited time and resources attempting to continue to incriminate the government's circles, because it's just a waste of our time. I want that energy redirected into this more constructive channel, pursuant to which we can encourage in an affirmative way the government circles to take the opportunity that's been presented to them to acknowledge the existence of extraterrestrial life via the Hubble and Kepler and Planck space satellites, space telescopes, and the other technology that we're developing now. So, as I say, it's in that spirit that I want to make the presentation that I'm going to be making today, for us to participate in this positive, kind of upward, positive, forward tactic of generating acknowledgement of the existence of an extraterrestrial civilization. So, all of that having been said, let me say that you have probably heard some of the previous announcement that I've made, that our institute, the Romero Institute, of which I'm the president and general counsel, which is the progeny or the descendant of the Christic Institute, which we had in Washington, D.C. for 20 years, that actually did the Iran-Contra case and did the Karen Silkwood case and did those other major civil lawsuits against government structures to force them to reveal things that they've been concealing. Our Romero Institute has in fact established a project which is the New Paradigm Institute, the objective of which is to begin to articulate what the fundamental philosophical and theological and public policy questions are that our human family has to start to address now in light of the coming acknowledgement on the part of official government circles that extraterrestrial life exists, pursuant to their use of the Hubble and the Kepler and the Planck space telescopes. So let's focus on this New Paradigm Institute that we're talking about here. I have as you know, one of the previous incarnations of my professional career, I was for 10 years between 1975 and 1985 general counsel to the United States Jesuit Order's headquarters in Washington, D.C. in their social ministry office. That's all kind of inside jargon. What it is that, as you know, the Catholic Church is the largest single religious denomination on the planet among our human family, and their largest order of priests inside the Catholic Church among the priests and religious women's orders is the Jesuit order, the Society of Jesus, that has existed since 1547, basically, in Western civilization. This major order of priests inside the Catholic Church has historically been made up of some of the major scholars in the Catholic Church, the theologians, the exorcists, the diplomatic corps, the professional professors and teachers in their universities, etc. And that they had, beginning in 1962, they have begun a major focus on the social justice issue on the planet. Their superior general at that time, Pedro Rupe, a Spanish Basque priest, Jesuit priest, and medical doctor, surgeon, redirected the Jesuit order from their previous hundreds of years of history, working very closely with the official government circles and the military circles and the ecclesial authorities of the Roman Catholic Church, that the Society of Jesus was redirected by Pedro Rupe to focus on the poor and the oppressed, the victims of unjust structures on the planet, to attempt to participate in reforming and actually deconstructing the structural sources of injustice on the planet. That's a long and involved story, and there are various readings that you can do if you're so inclined to take a look at this. But there is a book called The Jesuits, The Betrayal of the Holy Roman Catholic Church that was written by a disgruntled, very conservative Jesuit priest by the name of Malachi Martin. You can get that book, The Jesuits, The Betrayal of the Roman Catholic Church, and read his account of how the Society of Jesus, the Jesuit order, has transformed itself from a protector of the Vatican and a protector of the unjust ecclesial and governmental structures in Western civilization into what Father Malachi Martin referred to as the point of the spear in the social justice movement on the planet. Now that may be a bit overstated, hyperbolic criticism of the Jesuit order, but when I was the general counsel for the Jesuit order here in the United States in their social ministry office, I was intimately involved at that time in attempting to get the entire Jesuit order in the world, in the United States and in the world, to engage in this process of identifying the unjust structural sources of injustice on the planet, and to deconstruct those and to replace those with just structures. And that whole process that has been going on since 1962 has now culminated in the first Jesuit priest having become the Pope in the Roman Catholic Church. This is Francis, of course, Jorge Bergoglio. That this man has been involved in this long process over these last 40 years. That this process has now come into the main spotlight around the world because Francis has been now talking about social justice, talking about the structural sources of sin, acknowledging the commission of grave sins on the part of the Catholic Church in the past, the Vatican, and the government structures, the colonial government structures, the conquistadores that enslaved indigenous peoples in North and South America and through their missions around the world. This is being perceived as extremely radical conduct on the part of a priest. And so people are rather pleasantly surprised, many people, others quite unpleasantly disgruntled at what he is doing. But I point out this particular phenomenon going on right now because Pope Francis was here recently, just at the end of September here in the United States, and there's been a great deal of publicity about his statements and what he's been doing. So there's a great deal of public attention that's been drawn to this. So I direct our attention to that as a point of departure in my discussion here, so that you can understand that I have been personally an intimate part of this whole process in the Jesuit order for that 10-year period from 1975 to 1985. And so it was at that time that I was contacted in 1977 by the administration of the American government shortly after the election of President Jimmy Carter in November of 1976. And immediately after his being elected president, he called into a meeting the head of the American Central Intelligence Agency, George H.W. Bush at that time, who had been appointed to be the head of the Central Intelligence Agency by Gerald Ford right after Richard Nixon resigned in August of 1974. As you may remember, some of the older people here, but this, you've probably heard about this, the younger people in our audience, that President Richard Nixon was forced to resign the presidency in August of 1974, and he had selected as his vice president Gerald Ford, who became president at that point in time. And right at that same period of time, there was a major investigation going on the part of the United States Congress, chaired by Senator Frank Church from Idaho, which is called the Church Committee, the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence Abuse, that was actually engaged in a very aggressive investigation of the Central Intelligence Agency, the National Security Agency, the Defense Intelligence Agency, the Joint Special Operations Command of the Pentagon, other major governmental institutions that have been engaged in criminal covert operations around the world, part of these sinful structures that I had mentioned. There was a radical effort on the part of an element of people in the United States Congress, in both the House and the Senate, as well as President Carter, to attempt to deconstruct some of the structural sources of injustice that had ossified in our American government. And so it was right at that time that I was in Washington, D.C., and was the general counsel at Jesuit headquarters for this longer ongoing process that Father Pedro Rupe had initiated inside the Jesuit order to try to identify sinful structures. So I had been personally involved in the meetings with President Carter, getting President Carter to agree, for example, that he would cut off all United States military funding to foreign dictators who had been proven to be engaged in a systematic violation of the human rights of their own citizens. This led to the Jimmy Carter, when he was elected president, cutting off all military funding to Anastasio Somoza, the dictator in Nicaragua, cutting off the military support from the United States to the Shah of Iran, both of which governments collapsed shortly after the Carter administration cut off military funding for them. This is the activity that was going on in Washington, D.C. when I became general counsel for the Jesuit National Headquarters in their social ministry office. And so I was actively engaged in those meetings personally with President Carter and other members of his administration, and with senators and congressmen to participate in that process. And so in that rather heady atmosphere that was going on at that point in time, when President Carter was elected in November of 1976, I pointed out that he contacted the director of the Central Intelligence Agency, who'd been appointed by President Ford in that temporary 2-year period when Gerald Ford was president, from August of 1974 to the end of 1976, that he had appointed George H.W. Bush to be the director of the Central Intelligence Agency. And so when President Carter was elected in November of 1976, shortly after his election, he called CIA Director George H.W. Bush to meet with him. And one of the first things that President Carter asked was to have the head of the Central Intelligence Agency, Bush, communicate to President-elect Carter all the information that the Central Intelligence Agency had regarding extraterrestrial intelligence and the UFO phenomenon, and this whatever information they had about these alleged abductions that were going on with extraterrestrial beings, etc. In that meeting, George H.W. Bush was resistant to giving that information to President Carter. He actually said that, look, before I decide whether I'm going to give you this information as the president-elect, I want to ask you, this was George Bush talking to President Carter, I want to ask you to appoint me to be your Central Intelligence Agency director. I would like to be left on as the CIA director time after time when one president or another is elected. I want to remain the Central Intelligence Agency director in the same way that J. Edgar Hoover had been left on as the head of the FBI, under one president after another, whether they were Democrats or Republicans. And so George H.W. Bush, in this meeting that took place in December of 1976, that George H.W. Bush declined to give this information to President-elect Carter unless President-elect Carter would agree to appoint Bush to be his own CIA director. Well, President-elect Carter did not want to do that and told George H.W. Bush that he was not going to appoint Bush to be his CIA director. And so CIA Director Bush refused to give the information to the president and said, look, if you want to get this information, you don't have any need to know right now. You're not even the president yet. And so if you want to get that information, what you want to do is contact the House Science and Technology Committee in the House of Representatives and ask them to contact the Congressional Research Service and have them move and file applications to declassify this information if you're going to be given it before you're president. And so President-elect Carter did that. It dismissed George H.W. Bush and appointed his own director of Central Intelligence, but at the same time asked the Congress of the United States to get the Congressional Research Service in the Library of Congress to prepare 2 classified studies for President Carter. One was a study attempting to evaluate the evidence that existed for the existence of extraterrestrial intelligence, and the other one was to do a report on the issue of UFOs. How many of these unidentified flying objects have been confirmed to be potential extraterrestrial vehicles? How many of them were explained by other things really? Because President-elect Carter had formed the perfectly logical opinion that the military forces had been lying to the American people in pretending that virtually every one of these sightings could be explained as swamp gas or Venus or some other mundane explanation. So President Carter asked the Congressional Research Service to conduct these two major studies, one on the probabilities of the existence of extraterrestrial intelligence, and the second, an explanation for the UFO phenomenon. And it turns out that I was contacted by the head of the Congressional Research Services, Science and Technology Division, and was asked if I, in my capacity as General Counsel for the United States Jesuit Order, Social Ministry Office, whether I would contact the Vatican and make available to the Congressional Research Service whatever data the Vatican Library had in Rome regarding the existence of extraterrestrial intelligence or the UFO phenomenon. So I was contacted by Marcia Smith, who was the director of the Science and Technology Division of the Congressional Research Service early in 1977, and asked if I would serve as special counsel to that investigation, and in that capacity try to get information from the Vatican Library concerning these two subjects. I did, in fact, contact my superiors at the Jesuit Order, and they agreed to have me do this. So I, in fact, contacted the Jesuit priest who was the director of the Vatican Library and asked to have access to the Vatican Library, to the classified sections of the Vatican Library, to ascertain this information. He, in fact, refused to allow me to have that information. So I communicated to Marcia Smith and the Congressional Research Service that I was not going to be allowed to have this information, and then I still remained as special counsel to the research that was being done by the Congressional Research Service, and in that capacity, I was asked to participate in identifying what type of information the Congressional Research Service might want to have access to help them prepare their reports for the president. And one of these sources I wanted to have access to were the still classified section of Project Blue Book. Now, for the older members of our group that are participating in this discussion today, you'll recognize what Project Blue Book was. It was the United States Air Force investigation to allegedly investigate and reveal to the American public what was known about the UFO phenomenon. And as we now know, there was a great deal of deception involved in that, and whereas a significant number of incidences of UFO contacts and even contacts with extraterrestrial beings were lied about by the United States government and were attributed to some more prosaic or mundane explanation than what was true. And so I asked to have access to the still classified portions of Project Blue Book. And much to my pleasant surprise, I was authorized to have access to that. And some of you have heard me explain what it is that happened at that point, but some of the younger people in the audience probably haven't heard about that. And so what happened was that I was contacted by Marcia Smith, and Marcia Smith, as I said, the head of the Science and Technology Division of the Congressional Research Service, informed me that there had been a decision made to actually provide this access to the classified portions of Project Blue Book, and that these portions of Blue Book were going to be brought to the new, at that time, brand new wing of the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C., and were going to be made available to me to go and see. And that I had to, on a particular Saturday morning, go to this new building in Washington, right in downtown Washington, right next to the Capitol building. When I arrived, there were two what I call suits, these security men, government security guys, at the door. Insisted upon seeing two forms of identification, so I showed them my driver's license and my passport and other things to verify that it was me, and they allowed me in. And I went into the building. It was totally unoccupied at that time. It was brand new. It had just been completed, and there were nobody in the offices yet at that point. So I went in and went down the hall, and they told me to go down the hall and go down this particular elevator. So I went down the hall and went down the elevator, and I came into the basement, and I could see down at one end of the hall these two other suits standing there in front of this door. So I went down to that point, and they rechecked my identification, and they allowed me in, but they said, wait a second, you're not allowed to bring your briefcase in or anything. But what I had done in the elevator on the way down, just for some reason, I opened up my briefcase and I took out a yellow legal pad and put it under my arm. And so when I arrived at the door downstairs in the basement, I handed them my briefcase that they insisted upon having, and they told me that I was not going to be allowed to make any recordings or any notes of anything that I was to see in there. But they didn't notice that I had the yellow pad under my arm. So I went in to this room. It was a small room, about, I would say maybe 18, 20 feet wide by 10, 15 feet wide. In that room, there were these three tables, and they had these shoebox sized boxes, these kind of pale green, kind of institution green boxes, and there was actually an old microfiche reader there, one of those kind of tin microfiche readers where you can hand crank this thing to look at microfiche. And there was actually I kick myself to this day because there was a projector, a movie projector, a little kind of thing sitting on the side there. And so I figured that, well, I'm going to start methodically going through these things. I didn't know how much time I was going to be given to do this. So I sat down and started opening up these little these shoebox sized boxes, and they were filled with little cans of microfiche. For the younger people in our audience who don't know what that is, it's like a little kind of film canister, in that it's like the negatives of a film, and you can put it in these little machines. You just put it in this little scroll like thing, and they shine a light through it, and you crank it with your hand, and it shows pictures of documents, etc. And so I began that process, looking through one box after another of these microfiche, and I could see that they were documents. 99% of them were all documents, and I started looking through them, started trying to read them, and then I said to myself, gee, this is going to take forever to try to read these things. So I started going through them faster and faster, looking for photographs. And I came upon a set of photographs, and it must have been probably the third or fourth box of these things that I was looking at. And I came across these negatives of photographs, and I saw that in one of these photographs there was what was absolutely clearly what we call a UFO, a saucer, a flying saucer. The classic with the disc 100 yards wide with a big dome on the top of it, and it had hit into a field, a snow-covered field, and had plowed a huge trench like through this field in the snow, and then it lodged into the side of the. Well, it's actually this way as I was looking at it. It was lodged into the side of a snow-covered hill. And it was sticking up at like a 45-degree angle out of the snow-covered bank, but it was perfectly obvious what it was. This could have come right out of your classic photographs of a UFO, and I could tell the size of it because there were people around it. There were U.S. Air Force personnel. you could tell that's what they were. They were in these U.S. Air Force jackets or coats with big furry fur around the edges of the hoods, and they were all around this craft in these photographs. There were about, I don't know, 4 to 6 photographs, separate photographs of this craft from different angles. But in one of them that I hit upon, you could see that there was a cameraman, a U.S. Air Force cameraman, and it dated these photographs because it was a camera that had these 2 big round canisters on the top of the camera, which puts it back in the 50s sometime, like late 50s, that kind of camera that people had at that time. And so that I could kind of figure that's approximately when this must have taken place. And I was trying to see what detail I could see in these photographs. It was in this, as I say, it was in this overhead projector, this microfiche projector, like that you can see in libraries. I guess they're still there in libraries, except most people have computers now in the library, so you don't use these machines. But I hand cranked through these photographs until I found a photograph that showed a clear, rather close-up picture of the craft itself, and I could see that on the dome of this aircraft, of this UFO that was stuck in the side of the bank, I could see along the bottom of the little dome that was on top of the craft what appeared to be writing or symbols of some sort. And so what I did is I cranked up the photograph and I magnified I zoomed in closer to in this photograph, and I could actually see the symbols that were on the base of this dome on the craft. And what I did is I looked around to see if any of these 2 suits that were outside the door were looking. They weren't paying much attention. So what I did is I took the yellow pad out and I opened it up to the cardboard backing, and on the inside of the cardboard backing, I slid the cardboard in under the overhead projector so that the actual image of the photograph was right on the back of this inside of this cardboard backing of the yellow pad, and I literally traced the exact symbols that were on the base of the dome of this UFO, because I wanted to get it exactly right. Because if there was ever going to be a time when one could kind of, with computers in the future, maybe figure out what these symbols were saying, I wanted to have them absolutely perfectly exact. So I traced them exactly, and then I closed up the yellow pad and set it aside. And then I admit, after all, I started getting worried. I started getting kind of a little frightened because they told me not to take any notes. And so I kept saying, well, it's not exactly notes. I actually traced these things. And so I put aside the yellow pad, and I took the little reel off there and I put it back in the canister and put it back in the box, turned off the little overhead projector thing. And then I should have, and there's not any doubt about this, and I've revisited this any 1,000 times in my life, I should have stayed in there and looked as long as I could until they physically threw me out of the place. You know, I could have, if I would have stayed in there until I'd grown a beard if I had to do again. But the bottom line is that I was so concerned that they were going to stop me and take that away from me, that what I did is I turned everything off and closed it down. I put the yellow pad under my arm again, lengthwise this time, so that you could barely see it. And I just walked out the front door. And both of these suits, these security guys, were kind of startled. And so I just walked over and picked up my briefcase where they set it down and started walking down the hall. And I got, must be maybe 14, 15 feet down the hall from these guys. And all of a sudden, one of the guys said, hold it. And I went, uh-oh. And he said, what's that you've got there? And I said, oh, this is my briefcase. I said, I just picked up my briefcase. Said, no, under your arm there. And he walked over to me and he pulled the yellow pad up under my arm, and he opened it up and he riffled through the yellow pages of this, and there wasn't anything on them. And he didn't see the inside back cardboard backing for this thing. So he handed the thing back to me. So I took it and put it under my arm, and then kind of whistled down the hallway to the library, or to the elevator, and got on the elevator and went up and left the building. And that was a Saturday morning, I remember. So Monday morning, I go back into the Jesuit headquarters, and I went right in to see Father William Davis. William J. Davis was my superior at the Jesuit. I was a candidate for the Catholic priesthood at that time at the Jesuit office. And I went in to see him, and I showed him what I had, and I told him what I had seen. And he was silent for several long seconds. Then he bent down and he slid open the drawer of his desk, and he took out a little envelope, and he handed it to me. And I opened it up and looked at it, and it was an 8.5 by 11 black and white glossy photograph of a UFO. And I looked at it, and I said, I asked him, what is this? He said, well, my sister is married to the air traffic controller in the Seattle, Washington airport. And one of his best friends, who's a commercial pilot, took this photograph out of the window of his commercial airliner. And the pilot was worried about getting in trouble for doing this, and he didn't know what to do with the photograph. So he took it and gave it to the air traffic controller, his friend. And the air traffic controller brought it home and showed it to his wife, Father Bill Davis's sister. And so he said he didn't quite know what to do with it. So what he said is, let's give this to your brother. He's a priest. like as if that was some kind of logical thing to do. Because now that says something right there. Number one, that the commercial pilot saw the UFO clearly himself, had the presence of mind to take a photograph of it, obviously had a camera or something with him in the cockpit, took a photograph of it, and didn't dare turn it in to official authorities at all, because of the pushback that was consciously and intentionally being choreographed inside every government institution and business institution to try to deny the reality of this phenomenon. And so what he did, however, he felt morally constrained to give it to the air traffic controller, who was his friend. And his air traffic controller friend, he wouldn't turn it into anybody. But he felt morally compelled to show it to his wife, and then actually ask her to give it to her brother because he's a priest, like as if this had some kind of theological implication of what was going on here, which I would point out is true. And so Father Davis gave that to me. So what I did is I took the yellow pad and I put it into this big envelope that had this 8.5 by 11 glossy photo in it, and I put it in my files, in the Jesuit files. And when we later established the Christic Institute, Father Bill Davis and I and others who founded the Christic Institute, that we had this in our files, I'm sure. But when we left Washington, D.C., we brought all these files with us. We carried them around with us. I came to California and ended up teaching at the University of California at Santa Barbara, and then later at the University of California in Santa Cruz. And some portion of all of our different files at one point were stored in a storage locker, and some of them got wet during this big, gigantic, actually El Nino that happened. I can't remember how long ago it was, but in the storage facility threw away some of the boxes that got totally soaked, and we never did know exactly what they all were until I went looking for my Jesuit files. And it's quite clear that the part of the files that got wet and destroyed were the Jesuit files. And you know, in addition to being at the Jesuit office, I was at the #1 Wall Street law firm, Cahill, Gordon, Sonnet, Reindel, and Ohl. I have all my records from there. And I was in F. Lee Bailey's office as one of the 3 criminal defense attorneys there. So we got these files, but a certain portion of them got wrecked with that El Nino, and that was apparently part of it, because I've searched and searched, you know, and I will be the first to say this sounds like total crap. If I were a lawyer and, I was taking someone's deposition and they gave me this big long story and then I said, well, where is it? And they said, oh, my dog ate it, or something. I would say, well, I'm going to dismiss that. And so people are perfectly entitled to do that if you want. But I'm sitting here telling you that that's exactly what happened. That's all. I know that I saw that photograph, and I do not believe at all that that was some phony setup of some sort. So that was as of 1977. And I was also later contacted when we actually went forward and finished this research for the Congressional Research Service, and they prepared the two reports for President Carter, one on the probability of the existence of extraterrestrial intelligence, and the second one on these UFO phenomena. We submitted those to President Carter, and I was contacted and asked to provide a 3-hour closed-door seminar to the top 50 scientists at SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California. I flew out from Washington, D.C. And did a 3-hour closed-door seminar, not dissimilar to this that we're doing here today, on the theological implications of contact with an extraterrestrial civilization. And it was the people were fascinated there, the scientists who were engaged in the actual search for extraterrestrial intelligence. But as you know, again, the older people in the audience here know that what they're doing is they're scanning the skies with radio telescopes, attempting to discern whether there are any kind of radio signals, intelligent artificial radio signals that are being emitted by any of the star systems, which could be attributed only to intelligent life. And that's a fairly primitive way of going about searching for extraterrestrial life, and it still continues to this day. But there are many more, much more highly sophisticated methods by means of which contact is being sought now on the part of our human family. And we've touched on at the very beginning of our discussion here this morning the existence of the Hubble Space Telescope, the Kepler Planet Hunter, the new Planck telescope, that there are numerous means being used now to, but directed toward finding out whether there's extraterrestrial intelligence. Now, you would say to yourself, why in the world would the government be spending billions of dollars on this type of technology if they knew that that extraterrestrial beings were landing on the planet, flying saucers around, and being encountered by people? Why would they be going around spending all of this extra money attempting to find the extraterrestrial intelligence through some other means? Well, the reality of it is that the amount of money that they're spending on SETI, just using radio telescopes looking for this, is not that significant, I might add. And it provides a perfectly sound cover for the fact that they almost certainly have other data and that verifies the existence of extraterrestrial intelligence, but that they're maintaining the SETI program as basically a front, as a cover. And the other more sophisticated programs like Hubble and Kepler and Planck, et cetera, have many other additional purposes in exploring the universe than just this issue of trying to find extraterrestrial intelligence. Now that sounds a little funny, doesn't it? You say just discover whether there's extraterrestrial intelligence, because that is such a profoundly important issue for our human family. Now, this leads to a second thing that and again, I apologize to some of the people here in our discussion who've heard this before, but it's because of there being a number of younger people, newer people that are involved here today. I guess there's 265 people that are here with us here today. That the next time that I was directly involved in these types of activities is when I was contacted by Dr. John Mack. That's 1994. That is an entire what's that, 14 years later, and 15 years, 25 years later, actually. You see I have high proficiency in mathematics here. But the bottom line is 1994, I get contacted by Dr. John Mack, who is the chairman of the Department of Clinical Psychiatry at Harvard Medical School, and was retained by Dr. Mack to represent him in front of a Harvard University faculty, because Dr. John Mack had been contacted and asked to do a psychological workup on a number of military officials who had encountered these. What is this? Can Danny mention the book? Oh, he spoke once. Oh, which book?
Did you mention your book?
Oh, my book. Oh, no. I yeah, that was just a note from Kosta and Annie, saying to mention the book that I've written. I have written a book that is called The People's Advocate. That you can get this. You can contact us at the Romero Institute. That's the romeroinstitute.org. You can sign on to the internet, and you can get a copy of this book, The People's Advocate, in which, but pointedly, it doesn't talk about this stuff in the book. The editors of the book said, look, this is such a profoundly important subject, it really merits another entirely different book, because the minute you start talking about this stuff in the midst of all your other cases and everything you've done, it's a lot like saying, well, other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how did you like the play? Because what it does, everybody goes immediately to that stuff. And this book, The People's Advocate, talks about my work on the Pentagon Papers case, the Karen Silkwood case, the Iran-Contra case, the Watergate burglary case, the case that established the right of the journalists to protect their confidential news sources, the case that established the right of unmarried people to have access to birth control, the other cases that I've done, many of which are in the Supreme Court. And so that's the first of 3 books that I'm writing. So The People's Advocate is already available through the romeroinstitute.org website. I'm in the midst now of writing the second of the 3 books of the trilogy. This is a book called Rulers of the Realm, in which we'll be dealing with the kind of people behind the scenes that unofficially pull the strings on policies for our government and other governments around the world. Did you close that, Patty? And then there'll be a third book, which we're engaged in basically discussing right now. This is the issues that we're talking about right now are going to be the issues in the third book. That therefore say, in light of everything that you've done and everything that you've discovered, what is it that needs to be done by people? And so that's what we're talking about here today. So getting back to the issue with Dr. Mack, that Dr. Mack had been contacted by government officials and said, look, here we have a 2-star general or a full bird colonel, lieutenant, or full colonel, who has said that he, for example, walked out into a field and put his hand right on a UFO. And he's reported it to his superiors. And we need to have this person have a full workup of a psychological test to be able to verify that he's not mentally ill. Now, this is a two-edged sword. On the one hand, it could be incriminating, trying to suggest that someone has to have a test like that because it's suggesting that they think he's nuts, but on the other hand, it would be helpful for a person to have a verified confirmation of the fact that they're not nuts if they've reported something like that. And so that Dr. Mack had as the head of the Department of Clinical Psychiatry at Harvard Medical School, had been called upon to perform a few of those tests for very high-ranking people in the government. And then what happened is Bud Hopkins, again, man that many of us are very familiar with, and I've met Bud any number of times, and he was a person in New York City, an artist, sculptor, and who were moved in very high, sophisticated social circles, and knew people that were fairly well off and well financed. And he gathered together lots of people from the social community who wanted to look into this issue of UFOs and extraterrestrial intelligence and abductions, etc. And he ended up, coincidentally, or at least willy-nilly, being one of the more intelligent, articulate people in the United States who was actually spending a substantial amount of his time following up on accounts of direct contacts with extraterrestrial beings and UFO sightings, etc. And Bud Hopkins ended up writing a number of books about this particular phenomenon. It became quite well known, and therefore became kind of a magnet for these stories. When people would have an experience like this, people would say, gee, you ought to contact Bud Hopkins. So Bud Hopkins had gathered a large number of stories from highly credible people about their contact experiences. And Bud Hopkins, when he found out that Dr. John Mack at the Harvard Medical School was actually doing psychological workups on people of importance who'd had these kind of experience, Bud Hopkins began to send some of his more credible people to get a psychological set of a battery of tests done by Dr. John Mack. So John had actually done interviews, in-depth interviews and psychological tests throughout the entire kind of protocols of a number of people, and had started to become thoroughly puzzled by this phenomenon of, law enforcement officers, school teachers, lawyers, fire chiefs, military officials, government employees, all kinds of people who had absolutely no reason for manufacturing a story like that, telling about having had direct personal physical encounters with extraterrestrial beings, many of which in direct conjunction with UFOs being sighted on the ground, or missing time. And excuse me, I feel like Rubio here, getting a glass of water. Bottom line is that these people, Bud Hopkins was bringing more and more of these people to Dr. John Mack, and he was giving them these tests and was becoming puzzled at what this phenomenon was, because he started out, like many people deep inside the academy, being told repeatedly that there was nothing to these stories, that this was ridiculous for anybody to think that there was actually extraterrestrial life, that they were visiting our planet, that they were flying around in these UFOs, etc. But what happened is, after about a dozen or more of these people, of him saying, look, at these people test out to be perfectly rational and sane. This doesn't make any sense. And what he did is Dr. John Mack wrote an article about this phenomenon as the chairman of the Department of Clinical Psychiatry at Harvard Medical School, and submitted it to the New England Journal of Medicine, and they refused to publish it. And they sent it back to him saying they weren't going to publish it. And he was puzzled because he'd won the Pulitzer Prize. He won the Pulitzer Prize for writing the definitive psychobiography of T.E. Lawrence of Arabia. So he'd won the Pulitzer Prize as an author. So he wrote this article, he submitted it to the New England Journal of Medicine, and they refused to publish it. So he sent them a letter saying, what do I need to do? Do I need to just put in more footnotes? Do you need a kind of additional examples of it, more case studies? And they didn't answer him. So he went ahead and actually did all those things that he had pointed out in his letter to them that he would do. So he did a second version of his article and submitted it to them again. And within a matter of a few days, the assistant editor of the New England Journal of Medicine appears in his office, in Dr. Mack's office at Harvard, and returns the envelope to him unopened, and said, Dr. John Relman, who's the editor of the New England Journal of Medicine, wanted to have me hand deliver this back to you and inform you that we've not even opened it. and we're not going to publish this no matter what you do. And John was upset about that. He was offended by that. And so he contacted a publisher and published this thing, an extended version of this, as a book, which is called Abductions, Human Encounters with Aliens. That was the name that the publishers chose for it. But it's a major book. You should get it. For those of you who haven't read it, Dr. John Mack. It's called Abductions, Human Encounters with Aliens. And it recounts the experience that Dr. John Mack had talking with these various people. And it's pretty impressive, actually. And when he published this, within a matter of a week or two, the dean of the Harvard Medical School comes into John's office and says, oh, John, he said, I heard that you'd published this book. A number of people have been calling me about it, and so I'd like to get a copy of the book. As if he couldn't have gone to the bookstore and gotten it. Anyway, so he wanted to get a copy of the book and read it, and then he wanted to meet with John and ask him some questions about it. Well, John was delighted. He said, okay, this is great. The dean is interested in this stuff too. And the dean said, look, as long as we're going to be getting together, why don't we get a number of the other members of the faculty together so we can discuss this? And John thought that was terrific. He said, look, we're going to have like a grand rounds on this issue of extraterrestrial intelligence. So they set up a time and date for John to go to the meeting with the dean and these other people. So when John shows up, it turns out there they are sitting up on this big dais, assembled like a tribunal. And you had the dean of the Harvard Medical School, you had the legal counsel for Harvard University, 3 or 4 other members of the faculty, 2 of whom he realized were adversaries of his on a number of different issues. And it turns out that it was being chaired by Dr. John Relman, who was the editor and publisher of New England Journal of Medicine. And they began to excoriate him for having written this book. And he was flabbergasted by this whole thing. So he got up and left the meeting and actually called his mother, and said, look what just happened to me. And so she recommended that he go to the family lawyer. There was a very wealthy family, John Mack's family. His father had been a medical doctor, and they were fairly well off and had a family lawyer. So he goes to see the lawyer, and the lawyer sat down and said, look, give them anything they want. Answer any questions they want. They were demanding copies of any audio tapes of the sessions that he had with these people, whether he billed them, they were trying to challenge him to find out anything wrong that he might have done, so they could excoriate him for this. And here's this lawyer telling him to go ahead and cooperate with them, give them anything they want. Well, he didn't think that was very good advice. It turns out that the lawyer was in the law firm that represents Harvard University. So he was offended at that as well. So he contacts his best friend, who was his best man at his wedding and everything, and who happens to be the chair of the art department at the Santa Barbara City College. Ron Robertson, his name is Ronald Robertson. He contacts him and explains to him this kind of terrible thing that's happening to him. And Ron Robertson, I was teaching at the University of California at Santa Barbara, and so Ron Robertson had come to a number of my lectures, and so he approached me and asked me whether I would be willing to accept a telephone call from Dr. John Mack and consider representing him, since I'd gone to Harvard College and Harvard Law School and Harvard Divinity School, and I could sort of wag the old school tie at them and represent him in front of this bizarre faculty committee. So John called me and flew me to Boston, and so I sat down with him and agreed to represent him. And we go, John and I went around and decided we were going to start, I decided we were going to start preparing a major presentation to make to this faculty committee. If they had made the mistake of attempting to convene such a panel, we would take advantage of it by turning it into a grand rounds, and we would present evidence to them to verify the bona fides of the process that he was engaged in. And so we went and met with Dr. John Mack, and I went and met with Lawrence Rockefeller, and Lawrence Rockefeller agreed to finance the entire presentation. And so we had access to an open-ended amount of money, $1 million if we needed it, to bring in all the witnesses, to prepare the evidence, to show them the videos of sightings, everything. And so we were, John Mack went from being completely depressed and feeling totally overwhelmed and set upon into viewing this as a positive opportunity that we had to place before the, the faculty of one of the great universities of our planet, the evidence about the existence of extraterrestrial intelligence and these extraordinary encounters that people were having. And so we began to do that. So we go back to the hearing, the next session of the hearing, and I went with John, and we come into the hearing room, and here they are. Again, here they are all arrayed on this dais up there. And right away, Dr. John Relman decides he's just going to start interrogating Dr. Mack. And so I just stopped him and I said, "Excuse me, my name is Daniel Sheehan. I'm a 1967 honors graduate of Harvard College and 1970 graduate of Harvard Law School. I was the co-founder of the Harvard Civil Rights Law Review and did the master's program, and then it was enrolled in the PhD program at Harvard Divinity School in comparative social ethics before I became chief counsel for the United States Jesuit headquarters in their social ministry office. I'm representing Dr. Mack here, and I'd like to have you explain to me exactly what it is we're doing here. I mean, what is this thing? This doesn't appear to be an AAUP sanctioned meeting. The American Association of University Professors has a whole set of protocols if you're going to be engaged in some sort of disciplinary program against one of your faculty members. And so Dr. John Relman, again, who was chairing the committee, who was the editor and publisher of the New England Journal of Medicine, said, what happened is when Dr. Mack published this book, he said the dean here of the Harvard Medical School started receiving a number of phone calls, and they were making inquiries about this book with Dr. Mack, and the dean found himself in a position where he wasn't able to really answer these questions. So he thought, look, why don't I go and talk to Dr. Mack? And as long as I'm going to be talking to Dr. Mack, why don't we have another number of the faculty participate in this discussion too? And so that's all that this is. I mean, what a crock that was. I mean, talk about a limp-wristed explanation for this thing that they were doing. So anyway, so I said to him, in that case, if that's what all this really is can you tell me who is it that called? And there was this big deafening silence in the room. It went on for like about 20 seconds, a big dull silence. And finally, he turned and looked to the legal counsel for Harvard that was sitting next to him, and the legal counsel goes like that. And so Dr. Relman says, "Oh, I'm sorry, we're not at liberty to discuss that." And I said, "Oh, well, okay, further in the spirit of the gathering here, if he's being asked questions he didn't know the answer to, what were the questions that he was asked, so that we can know what it is that we're supposed to be addressing here?" And again, there was a big long silence, and the legal counsel looked over at him and went, he said, "No, I'm sorry, we're not at liberty to discuss that either." And I said, "Well, okay, then let me ask you this. Is it safe to say that during the course of this proceeding, whatever its nature is, that either one or both of the following factual issues are going to be at issue here? Number one, whether there exists extraterrestrial intelligence, and number two, whether or not at least some of these so-called UFO sightings that have taken place are likely to be an extraterrestrial vehicle from some other civilization, from some extraterrestrial intelligence civilization." And Dr. Relman looked out, he said, "Well, those are absolutely going to be at issue here, and it's completely ridiculous for anybody to think that either one of those two things is true." Now, and I'm telling you the truth. This is Harvard University, one of, if not but one of the greatest universities on our planet, the kind of paradigm of education in academic freedom, saying something ridiculous like that. That it's completely ridiculous to think that extraterrestrial intelligence might exist, or that at least some of these sightings might actually be a vehicle from some other extraterrestrial civilization. I mean, there are internal U.S. government documents that say that. That's what they think it is, and so the ignorance that was being displayed at that moment, and the closed-mindedness and the prejudice that was being displayed by at least by Dr. John Relman. But there was the legal counsel for Harvard University, the dean of the medical school. They were all sitting there and remaining completely silent in the face of that type of assertion on the part of the chairperson of that particular committee. And so I said to him at that point, I said, oh, well, in that case, I said, if those two issues are definitely going to be at issue here in this, let me, in the spirit of candor, tell you that Dr. Mack and I have just spent a long period of time with Lawrence Rockefeller, who has agreed to finance our presentation to you of all of the best evidence that exists as to, number one, the existence of extraterrestrial intelligence, and two, that at least some of these particular sightings of UFOs and reports of direct contact with extraterrestrial beings appear to be true. And so that we thank you for the opportunity to get to do this. At which point the legal counsel for Harvard University leapt to her feet and she said, absolutely not. We're not going to allow this hearing to be turned into some kind of a circus, she said. And so I said, really, circus? That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a professional grand rounds on these two issues that your own chairman has explicitly acknowledged here on the record are going to be at issue. And so that I wouldn't view this as a circus of any kind. And she said, well, absolutely not. We're not going to allow that. So I turned to John and I said, okay, John, we're done here. Let's go. And so I reached down and kind of actually lifted him up by his elbow because he was kind of stunned and was going, well, he kind of thought we had to sort of sit there and take this kind of treatment from the faculty committee, which we did not. So we got up and left. And I said, look, when the point comes when you want to have an intelligent discussion of this and an objective discussion of this, we're more than happy to participate in this. And I've already told you that we're prepared to present this evidence. So when you're ready to do that, you just contact us. And so they basically collapsed. And they ended up writing a letter of apology to Dr. Mack and apologizing for this being misperceived, what it is that they were trying to do here. And they came back with this same, ragamuffin explanation for what they said they were doing, which was transparently not true. And so they finally left him alone. And what John Mack did, John Mack went on to found and establish an organization called the Project for Extraordinary Experience Research, PEER. There at his offices next to the campus at Harvard University. It was not an official institute or organization of Harvard University, but it was right next door to the campus. And people from around the country, because of this miscue on the part of the faculty at Harvard University and the administration, because there's no way to believe that the legal counsel for Harvard University was participating in these sessions without that having been an official decision on the part of Harvard University. It clearly had been. And so that because of their serious miscalculation, it generated substantial publicity around the country on this issue. And so many more people contacted Dr. John Mack with their experiences and offered to come and see him. And so that the whole project on extraordinary experience research, I became legal counsel for the project. And so I was privileged to be able to sit and participate in a lot of those meetings. And I was allowed to sit in session with, a dozen purported experiencers, people who had experienced close contacts of the third kind, with extraterrestrial beings. I participated in vetting a number of those people to say, look, I don't find this person credible. But so let's not continue having this person participate. Let's be diplomatic and kind of have them go their own way and not continue participating in these discussions. Here are the people that I think are the most credible on this as a lawyer, because I said the reputation of the Project for Extraordinary Experience Research is dependent upon us being entirely professional about this. And so what I began to do is I began to insert into the process of the evaluation of a lot of these encounter experiences an additional degree of legal precision. And that's not to say that the previous activities on the part of MUFON and the International UFO Congress, et cetera, it's not that they were not being professional, but it was, I thought, of some assistance, additional assistance, to have a highly trained Harvard Law School lawyer who've been experienced in trials and done a lot of very, very major cases in the United States and appeared in the United States Supreme Court, et cetera, that to participate in helping to additionally professionalize the whole process by means of which we evaluated the different stories and evidence and accounts that we've been given. And so because of that, I began to be invited to participate in doing reports, updating people at MUFON and at the International UFO Congress and other places about the progress of the case of Dr. John Mack. And then I began to be asked about my own opinions of things. And what I began to say is, look, it's a kind of a cute phrase, is they'll say, what do you think about the existence of extraterrestrial intelligence? So what I would always say was, I don't get paid to think, just and guess. I don't just guess at things. If you really want this examined and evidence garnered, I know how to do that. I know how to garner professional evidence. I know how to work with professional investigators. I know how to call expert witnesses. I know how to consult them and assemble their information and make presentations to objective juries. If you want that type of assistance, I'm more than happy to do this, but we have to do this professionally. And so I don't want to just sort of fling off the top of my head what my particular gastronomic opinion of something is. I've been trained professionally to know how to do this appropriately, and that was what I began to do at that time. And so when I'd be called upon to make a presentation at MUFON, I've done presentations at MUFON with Dr. John Mack, with Stanton Friedman, with Bud Hopkins, with Dr. Greer. With Richard Dolan, with all of the major people in the field, and so I began to, very fortunately, I view it as a great privilege, to be able to participate as a peer with these people in the field. So I began to direct greater and greater portions of my time and energy toward doing the kind of professional analysis of this information that we needed to have. So that's what has led me to come before a number of sessions of these different organizations. And when in 2009, the Pontifical Observatory in Rome, at Castel Gandolfo, the head of the director of the Pontifical Observatory, Jesuit priest, Dr. Jose Gabriel Funes, convened a gathering of world scientists at Castel Gandolfo, where the observatory, the Vatican Observatory, is in Rome. Back in November of 2009, they actually gathered these men and women together to brief some of the hierarchy of the Catholic Church on the ever-increasing probability that there was going to be contact established with extraterrestrial civilization through these new space-based telescopes of Hubble and Kepler and Planck, etc., that the data that was being gathered by these new technologies was making it ever more and more clear that it was virtually certain that extraterrestrial life existed, and it was going to be growingly certain that very highly sophisticated and highly evolved intelligent life existed elsewhere, and that we were going to be encountering this data. So Father Funes at the Observatory wanted to have the other leaders of the church briefed on this fact, so that they were not going to be caught like they were back in the days of Galileo and Copernicus, attached to some sort of completely medieval mythological perception of the universe and our role as a human family in it. And there's an entire theophany that has been developed by the Catholic Church around very outmoded and outdated visions of the universe. And so they did not want this to happen again. And so that at the end of a series of those conferences at Castel Gandolfo in Rome back in November of 2009, Father Funes and a number of the other people that were involved with the observatory and their sister observatory here in Flagstaff, Arizona, in the United States, they held a press conference at the Vatican, in the Vatican press room, officially endorsed by the Catholic Church, announcing that it appeared, because of the development of these newer technologies, such as Hubble and the launching of Kepler, the planet hunting space telescope, that it appeared to be more and more probable that sooner rather than later our human family was going to be encountering extraterrestrial life. And it was therefore going to be made clear to our human family that we were not the only sentient, intelligent life in the universe, and that we were almost certainly not even the most highly evolved of sentient life in the universe. And so therefore, the Catholic Church, when Copernicus and Galileo and others were asserting that the Catholic Church endorsed vision of the universe with our Earth and our human species being located at the exact geophysical center of the entire universe, and that the universe existed, was actually created solely and exclusively as the stage upon which the drama of human spiritual enlightenment was playing itself out, was apparently not true. Back at the Galileo's time, the church fought back against the attempts on the part of Galileo and Copernicus and others to push forward the fact that our Earth and our solar system was not at the center of the universe, and that it appeared that in fact that our Earth circled around the sun, and that the Earth was not the center even of our solar system. That the church did not want to go through this experience again, because when our human family had been dislocated from the center of the universe, there had to be a whole radical process that was undertaken by the Catholic Church and the scientific community of our human family to readjust our vision of ourselves. But what we did is, even though we had been dislocated from the physical center of the universe, what we did is we immediately constructed a pyramid and placed ourselves at the apex of the pyramid of all evolution. And that therefore we said, okay, it may not be that serious a problem that we're not physically located in the exact center of the entire universe, but it is clear that we're located at the apex of all sentient life. And so therefore we are the be all and end all, our human family. We are the whole basic central drama going on of existence in the universe. And so now, here as of 2009, it started becoming apparent to the leadership of the Catholic Church that that may well not be true. And so that Father Funes and the other people at the Vatican announced that the time had arrived in which we had to begin a very serious discussion about the profound philosophical and theological questions that were going to be posed to our human family when we encounter the existence of life elsewhere in the universe. And what was left unsaid at that press conference was that the real challenge is going to be presented to us when we discover that there is another highly intelligent, highly technologically developed, sentient species in the universe that is explicitly non-human. What does that mean? And the even additionally unarticulated question or observation at that point is, what happens when we discover that there's such a civilization that is vastly more evolved than we? What if we encounter a civilization in which the highly intelligent, highly technologically developed, sentient, but non-human species is in fact 1,000,000 years further advanced than we are, 10 million years further advanced than we are? What does that say to us? What type of response do we have as a human family in the face of this? Are we terrified by that prospect? Are we delighted at such a prospect? Are we inspired by such a process or such a revelation that we would want to figure out what it is they have figured out that we haven't figured out yet? Are we frightened that our whole civilization might go the same way that the primitive civilizations of Borneo or New Guinea somewhere, when they are encountered by a modern, technologically sophisticated society, that those primitive civilizations tend to totally disintegrate, and that they become totally infected and destroyed? Is that what's going to happen to our human civilization when we discover this fact? These are all profoundly important questions of a philosophical. Does that mean 10 minutes total that we have left?
I think for the question.
Oh, until we get to the questioning. Good. I'm sorry. We're just keeping track here, guys. Okay. So that those are the kind of questions that are going to be posed. So what I said is, hey, look, if Father Funes and the officials of the Catholic Church are issuing this call for people to start to have this very serious conversation, it's just my nature. I said, hey, why don't we have this conversation? Why don't we begin this conversation now ourselves? And what's happened most recently is Pope Francis has, through two major pronouncements that he has made, one in February of 2013, shortly after he was elected, in what they call a papal exhortation that was called Evangelii Gaudium, which is the great joy of sharing the good news. And more recently, in June of this year, in his papal encyclical that is called Laudato Si, which is glory unto you, which is, it's actually been translated now, is on the care of our common planet, or our common home, on the care of our common home. He has, and you've all probably heard about this, all of you, is in those two statements, he has announced that that global climate change is a huge and serious threat to our human family, and that he has said that he believes that at least some significant portion of this global climate change is being caused by our human activity. One of which is the burning of carbon fuels, fossil fuels, coal and petroleum and oil and gas, and spewing into the atmosphere these global greenhouse gas emissions. And in addition to that, he didn't say, but the fact that we have been doubling, tripling, and quadrupling the amount of red meat that our species eats, so that there's a huge increase in the number of cattle that are being raised for purposes of generating beef all through the equatorial regions of our planet, and they're cutting down huge swaths of rainforest to turn into fields for grazing these cattle, in destroying that vegetation which actually takes in out of the atmosphere carbon dioxide that is generated by the burning of fossil fuels. And in fact, a somewhat embarrassing point, but a point to be made importantly, is that these cattle excrete flatus from eating all this grass, and they excrete methane gas. And methane is like 8 times more serious, a global greenhouse gas emission, than just carbon monoxide. in carbon dioxide. So that the bottom line is, Francis was saying that a significant portion of the cause of global climate change is in fact human conduct, and that we need to come to grips with this. But very importantly, what he went on to say is that the primary engine of the destruction of the environment that is generating all of these global greenhouse gas emissions, et cetera, is transnational corporate capitalism. That transnational corporate capitalism is a comparatively new economic system that has been generated just since the American Civil War in 1868, the creation of a corporation, which in fact sets up a mechanism by means of which the people who own the company just own stock in it, and they are completely immunized against any type of legal liability for the conduct of that corporation. So even though they own it, they're completely immunized from any kind of legal liability for what it does, and its board of directors is legally immunized for any conduct it engages in, and its management are completely legally immunized. And so that it's driven to generate the greatest short-term generation of income possible so that it can distribute profits to its shareholders. And this inevitably drives these corporations to consume more and more of the products of the earth, the natural resources of our planet, and it motivates them to pass off the costs for the waste materials that result from the generation of these products into the general atmosphere and environment. And so we're contaminating our planet, but it's the corporations, it's these transnational corporate structures that are doing this. And he also points out that in order for them to succeed, they have to maintain the sale of massive amounts of goods and services, and that in order to generate profits for their stockholders, and so that they are engaged in creating a demand for their own products. And they're doing that by actually foisting upon the people of our planet an entire conscious worldview of what he calls postmodernism, in which they deconstruct, consciously go about using their intellect to deconstruct every single positive worldview that our human family is capable of generating, which lends importance to our own self as a human species. And that therefore they're destroying all of the worldviews that place great value on our being human beings. And they're saying that therefore the only real evidence you have of your value is what you own and what you consume, and how conspicuously you can consume. And so that there's an entire philosophy that has been generated by the conscious engineers of these transnational corporations to foist upon us this postmodern worldview of the complete lack of importance that our human family has, but for our consumption of goods and services. And so that he points out that our obligation as intelligent, educated human beings is to share the good news with people of the world that this isn't true, that this postmodern worldview, destroying and disassembling every single positive worldview that our human family has engineered, is not valid. It's not true. So that we, one and the same time, have Father Funes from the Vatican Observatory calling upon our human family to confront and answer these profoundly important philosophical and theological questions about the role of our human species in this new expanded cosmos and in this larger field of intelligence in the universe, trying to understand what our revisioned value is in the universe. And at the same time, Francis, the Pope, is calling upon us to be able to elucidate the alternative worldview to this postmodern kind of nihilist worldview. And so that I believe that we are all being called upon now by these structures, not only by the people at the Vatican Observatory and by Pope Francis and by all of the people that are attempting to address the issue of global climate change. We're all being called upon to confront and answer these profound philosophical and theological questions about the true nature of our human species. and what the relative relationship is between consciousness and the material world. And how does our consciousness relate to the consciousness of this other potentially much more highly technologically developed and much more consciously evolved a species in the universe? So this is the profound process, this discussion that I'm calling upon all of us here, the 265 of us that are involved in this particular conversation today, to participate in. And as you've probably heard, I'm in the process of actually tomorrow morning, I fly out to go sit down to meet with Father Funes, to get Father Funes to agree to take a sabbatical leave from the Vatican Observatory, and to have him come and be in residence at the Jesuit School of Theology here in North America, which is in Berkeley, California, and to participate with us in gathering together all of the great scholars of the world, and all of the great theologians of the world, and the spiritual practitioners of the world, at the Graduate Theological Union in Berkeley, California, at the University of California at Berkeley, and come together in a series of conversations about these very profound philosophical, theological, public policy questions that we have to answer. As long as Father Funes has made the call, right directly from the well of the Vatican press office in Rome, I have felt that we want to provide an opportunity for Father Funes to actually chair these discussions during a sabbatical year. I hasten to point out he has not agreed to do this yet. I've posed the question to him. He has invited me to come and sit down with him to talk with him about this. I'm going to be flying to Rome to sit down to talk with him at the Vatican Observatory, and I'm going to try to get additional people from the Catholic hierarchy to endorse this process. I'm going to we've been offered a major grant to purchase a facility at the Graduate Theological Union in Berkeley, California, at which these conversations are going to be taking place. We've been offered a major grant to finance the costs of gathering the world's greatest scholars together over a period of a year here to vet who it is that are going to be participating in this conversation. I'm going to be doing the same thing. I want to bring some of the better witnesses who have experienced direct contact with the extraterrestrial beings, either directly physically or by telepathy, to have them come and participate in these conversations, to be able to have an opportunity to convince some of the greatest scholars in the world of the validity of this experience that they've had. This is going to be an extraordinary undertaking that we're commencing now. And as I say, again, I hasten to point out that Father Funes nor the hierarchy of the Catholic Church have agreed, or the other major religious denominations. I've discussed this already with the Dean of the Jesuit School of Theology at Berkeley, who is supportive of this process. I've talked about it with the Dean of the top Episcopal Theological School, the Church Divinity School of the Pacific. And we're going to be establishing this conversation there at the Graduate Theological Union, which is made up of all of the top theological institutions there at the University of California. We're going to be inviting scholars from every one of the pertinent fields of human knowledge, from cosmology to astrophysics to astrobiology, to ontological studies, to epistemological studies, quantum physics, string theory, philosophy, theology, Buddhists, Hindus, the top spiritual practitioners from each of these different religious denominations, from each of the different fields of philosophy, the different theories, exponents of different worldviews, Marxists, capitalists, theists, absolute authoritarians, liberals, progressives. The advantage is that we have the opportunity, given the offering of funding that we have and the facilities that were being offered, we have the ability to construct this conversation and to facilitate this conversation. I'll be legal counsel to this entire process, which does not, by any stretch of the imagination, make me in charge of this. And no one individual is going to be in charge of this process. There's going to be a part of the ongoing discussion among all of the participants what we believe the proper protocol is pursuant to which to carry on this discussion. But we know that the call has been issued for this discussion. I take the call seriously. I intend to do what I can do to facilitate this discussion taking place. And I might point out that that I have been comparatively successful in the past when I decide to put at the disposal of a given community the resources and limited talents that I may have to cause such a discussion to take place and to get to some point of effective resolution of this issue, that I have been comparatively successful in doing this in the past. And that's what has enabled me to participate in the ways that I have in the number of kind of major public policy discussions that you have heard about in the past, whether it's deciding whether to get the 47 volumes of the Pentagon Papers exposed to the world, or whether or not it's to make a decision that unmarried people should have access to birth control without being subject to any kind of penalties or punishments for that. The decision that journalists should have the right to protect the confidential news sources that they have so they can reveal even top secret information if in fact it's in the national interest to do so. These are a number of other issues that I've had the privilege of being invited to participate in. And so I view myself as having been invited to participate in this new discussion. And so I am inviting you who are here, the 265 of us today, to participate in this discussion. And I will keep you posted regularly on the progress of this, of bringing together this conversation. Now, as I say, I hasten to point out again that there's still a lot to be done on this to get people to come forward to agree to participate in this. We're compiling the list of potential participants in this from various fields of human knowledge right now. And I believe that as we persuade more and more prominent people to come together to participate in this, since we can pay for their flights, bring them in, put them up at facilities at the University of California here in California, that we can get more and more people of the adequate stature to participate in this. And we're going to be recording all of this. We'll determine by the participants what degree of public access to these conversations they want people to have. But I will keep you briefed on the content of these conversations as we go along, so that you're the first 265 people to become participants in this conversation. And so what I want you to be able to do is to ask me any questions you want, both about this process, about what I'm coming to learn in the course of this process. If in fact people who participate in the process want to remain anonymous and not have their identities revealed, I'll respect that. But I will communicate to you the substantive content of what the discussions have come to at any given point. All right. So you have the great privilege through the good offices of the people who are participating here, Kosta and Annie and the other people, to have been brought into this conversation right at its very beginnings. So I want to invite you now to share with me your questions, and I'll answer your questions. I don't know where we are time-wise on this. I'll have to get a look at. We're started at 1. We're 2 hours. Go 2 hours in now.
Okay. Hi, Danny. Pardon me for interrupting here, but
no, that's I'm inviting this interruption right now.
You can go ahead and put yours on mute.
Don't I answer the questions?
You will, but the questions have to be
yes.
Oh,
yes, I know you have some questions. I do want to add one, that a bunch of questions that have been coming in that have been reiterated. People are excited as they've heard you talk about the new paradigm or about the theological seminary thing.
Yes.
And they want to know practically today, because of their excitement, how they can support what you're doing and be of service, really. I know you've already invited them into the conversation, and of course at ET Let's Talk, we'll be working together to keep them abreast of what you're thinking and maybe provide a conduit for them to participate. But beyond that, do you have any practical suggestions, or is that still going to evolve?
Well, it's at the very beginning of it right now. That what I would do, number one, obviously, is I would recommend that that we have sort of a regular session together, the 265 of us, which I assume when each of the 265 people go and tell their friends about what's happening here, could balloon fairly quickly to 500 people, then 1,000 people, and 2,000 people. And we hope it does, so that a larger and larger number of you will be able to participate each month, for perhaps, to have a monthly conversation. We could come together at we'll figure out the first of the month, something that's easy to remember, because everybody's very, very busy. They have lots of things to do. But if we could set up a specific date each month to come together on, for example, the first of the month, hypothetically, each month to have this conversation, I can make certain that wherever I am, I will have my computer with me, and so that I can come on via Skype. Is that we're on Skype? Is that, or whatever it is we're on here? The system you set up, that I can make myself available, that you guys will make yourself available, if the people will make themselves available and invite any of their friends. I would propose concretely, number one, that we have this meeting once every month. Number two, on a specific date that everybody can remember. Number three, that each of you who are listening, the 265 of you, tell your friends about this and invite them to your house, and open up your computer. I would also suggest that you get one of those hookups that you can hook this to your television, that you can plug into your, I believe it's true, you guys can tell me if it's true, you can plug your computer into your large screen television so that you can bring your friends together in the living room and see it on the big screen television. We can have this conversation, and you are going to be given access to asking questions of me, and your friends can ask questions of me. We'll work out some protocol. If we've got 2,000 people on the line, we have to figure out how to filter some of those questions. But our staff can get increased so that they can handle this. So that what you might do, fourthly, is you might be willing to send in $5, $10, whatever you can afford to the folks here, to have them be able to increase their staff and their technology so that they can handle your questions coming in and filter them more effectively. So that's a fourth thing you can do. I'm not asking you to give me the contributions, but contribute them to ET Let's Talk so they can increase their staff and professionalize their staff. Number five, I would ask you in calling together your friends and neighbors to participate in these monthly conversations. Fifthly, I would suggest that you have some preliminary gathering of those people who want to come to your house on, say, hypothetically, the first Saturday of every month, and come together. You have some preliminary meeting with them, for example, on the first Friday night of the month, and plan out what your thinking is, what information that you've heard, and share it with each other to get them involved in discussing this, because many of the people think that the whole discussion of extraterrestrial intelligence and UFOs and all that kind of stuff is something that they don't ever really get to participate in those discussions. So you could, each of you, the 265 of you that are listening now, could actually establish your own group and have them come together. on the first Friday night of every month, and prepare for the meeting Saturday afternoon, the first Saturday of every month, where I can get together with you and brief you on where we are in our conversations. What are some of the exciting things that have happened in the past month during the course of our conversations. I can share with you what happens in these conversations that the people agree I can share with you. I can tell you who the people are that are engaged in the conversation to the degree to which they consent to my doing that. So you can be brought right into the process. And then what I can do is I can bring back to the group your questions. So you get to actually, that we want to take full advantage of this extraordinary technology that we have available here to bring you into the process as much as we can. If in fact I am able to persuade them to do so, I could even potentially eventually establish a camera hookup into those conversations. So that if it goes that far, so that you can actually, every single one of you and your friends and your group can get unique access to those real-time conversations that are going on. All of these things are still possible. But I hasten again to ask you to do this. One of the things that we have to be extraordinarily careful about is not misrepresenting to ourselves or misperceiving what it is that's happening here. Okay, for example, I have just given you 5 different potential things that can happen here, but none of them are certain right yet, because it's up to you. This is what Francis has been saying to us, is look stop waiting for somebody else to do all these things. You can do these things. You have access now. Kosta and the people are providing you the opportunity right now to establish your own discussion group in your own home, out across the world, I guess, right here. To bring the people in, sit down on the first Friday of every month and have your discussion and figure out what you want to do. Bring them together on Saturday afternoon, and I'll be available for you to have these kind of conversations. And if, in fact, you go ahead and do that, then you start to self-qualify to be participants in the conversation. And if, in fact, I'm successful in getting the people who are participating in these conversations at the New Paradigm Institute in Berkeley, if I can persuade them to do it, then you'll be the ones that are privileged to get to sit in on those meetings, via this technology. So understand that the ball is in your court. The gift is in your hands. You can work with it if you want to. So that's what I would propose you do, very, very concretely. In help by just make a contribution to the ET Let's Talk people, so they can beef up their staff. They can spend ideally full time working on this. If you facilitate that for them. If there's 265 of you, if each of you just chipped in, $5, they can do this. And so that's what I'm asking. It's all very, very concrete, and it becomes very prosaic, in rather mundane tasks that we have to perform. But in even as romantic and as extraordinary a phenomenon as we're talking about here, it translates into doing the concrete steps that you need to do if you really want to participate in this. So those are some of my suggestions right away.
Well, those are excellent. I think any one of those 5 or all of those are some places where people can dive in. And so thank you for enumerating those. It really is exciting what you're proposing, and particularly the fact that because it's not a certain thing, we have in our hands right now the ability to propel it along by our participation. We're part of the process of making it happen. And to quote that old cliche, we're the ones that we've been waiting for.
Yes.
Not waiting for our galactic friends or the Vatican or any other people in other structures to solve things for us. Yes, we need to partner with others, but what you're calling upon right now is for us to step up, take charge, become our own destiny makers, as it were, and work together.
The bottom line is that that we've all known for some time that one of the major factors in trying to generate disclosure is demonstrating that you're worthy of it. You know, so this is, I mean, either you're willing to do what it is that is necessary to make this thing happen, or else if you want to sit around and wait for somebody else to do it, you can continue to express your disappointment in everybody else and them not doing it. But you need to understand that you are being offered the chance right now to make this happen.
And
So if you don't want to do it, you don't have to. But if you want it to happen, then do what it is I'm recommending, and then we can make this thing happen.
And that so ties in with what the mission of ET Let's Talk has been for all these years, and is expanding now, which is what we're calling the People's Disclosure Movement. You're addressing that very same thing. What we're proposing right now is just one facet of a way people can become active. Certainly, those of our teams who've been going out and making contact and writing reports and bringing in others into our team structure, our worldwide effort, are also doing that kind of work. So it's taking a lot of people, a lot of teamwork, and there are different ways we can be contributing to all this, not just sitting and watching the lights in the sky, like you say, but talking with each other and spreading the news, and frankly giving people like us the support that we need to purchase the technology and spend our time to bring everyone together. What you're talking about is kind of like a global village type of thing that we're building here, and I love that idea and applaud it. What I'd like to do,
and let me point out, Kosta, that what the specific task is that I'm asking you to participate in doing is formulating the new paradigm. I mean, that is exactly what this is it's attempting to identify the new paradigm, because that part of the excuses being used on the part of government officials, and not having explained this all to you earlier, is they don't think you're ready. They don't think that you have any kind of a worldview that is capable of coping with this. And so they're using that as an excuse by saying, oh, look, these people will freak out. They're going to jump out of a first-story window, if they find out that there's extraterrestrial intelligence. I don't believe that's true, but you have to demonstrate that it's true, that it's not true. You've got to demonstrate that you're willing to participate in identifying a full-scale paradigm. You need to find out what a paradigm is. What are the component elements of a worldview? What are the things that we have to discuss to put in front of these world scholars? What are the questions we need to get them to answer? You need to be willing to participate in that. And if you're willing to participate in it, you are going to be the architects of the new paradigm. And that once that new paradigm has been established, and it says, oh, good, now we're prepared. Our human family is prepared to cope with this information, and that we're going to be able to understand that we're not going to run out and start worshiping all these beings as some kind of gods. On the other hand, we're not going to, allow the military forces to try to fight with them. That we're going to design a paradigm that is rational, level-headed, theologically sound, philosophically sound, metaphysically sound, in order to take in this information. Okay, I mean, even the people who've had the experiences with the ETs, they'll tell you over and over again that at the very first instance of this, they are completely petrified when this happens. They're driving along a highway in the middle of the night, and a UFO lands in a field, and they become terrified, like Barney Hill. They open up the trunk of their car and take out the tire iron, to figure out how to beat up one of these beings. I mean, this is a level of consciousness that we have to try to overcome, and so that we have to have a much more welcoming paradigm, a compassionate paradigm, but one that is not naive. Because look at all of if you take 90% of the major media presentations of extraterrestrial beings, they're portraying them as some horrible, terrible threat, some ugly gob of goo that wants to come and eat you and your children, or blow you up or take over your planet, and so that we have to be able to construct an alternative perception of extraterrestrial beings. Okay, again, we don't want to be naive. The classic paradigmatic, naive person is George Adamski. You know, real early on, and you people that are under 40 years old don't even know who I'm talking about now, probably. But you know, at the very beginning, back in the early 1950s, after the Roswell experience and all of that, you know, George Adamski and the people started going around saying, oh, this is so fantastic. All of these extraterrestrial beings are spiritual beings. They're welcoming us into a new spiritual realm and all that. You know, nobody believed him. You know, almost nobody believed him, and they made fun of him. So that, you know, we aren't going to we aren't going to be able to present some kind of completely simple-minded, naive, romanticized vision of extraterrestrial intelligence to our human family and have it be accepted. You know, and on the other hand, we cannot allow to be accepted this antagonistic, hostile, fear-filled, militarized view of how it is we're supposed to respond to these beings. You know, this establishes kind of the bookends of the discussion that we have to be willing to have. And if you want to participate in it, you're going to have to do some homework. You want to familiarize yourself with the data that's around, the books that are at the public library. You can go down to the public library and you'll find probably 50 books at least, even in your closest library, of books that contain all kinds of information that people are putting forth about this, and that you want to start doing your homework. This is like a course. This is going to be like a monthly course that you have your discussion session where you bring your friends and neighbors together, perhaps on the first Friday of every month, and you bring them together into an actual lecture and discussion group on Saturday afternoon, and I can be sharing with you the insights of the top scholars in our entire human family and what we've been discussing during the course of this month about this stuff. And then you can feedback to me. You can talk with me. You can give me questions to deliver to these people that you want answered. You are representing our human family right now. You are telling us, you have a possibility of talking indirectly through me to the greatest scholars on the planet about what it is your concerns are. You know, what is it you want to know? What is it you want to say to them? So that I will do everything in my power to act as an intermediary between you and the people involved in these discussions, even to the point of suggesting that you be welcomed to be real-time witnesses to those discussions if they're willing to do that.
Yeah.
So you are being invited to participate in becoming architects of the new paradigm. That's the invitation that you're getting today.
That could not be any clearer. So I will ask our membership to take that into their thoughts. We'll be asking for feedback and organizing ourselves. You know, even if there were 5 of us in a room, it's something that really needs to be done. If we're 265 or 500, we welcome all that too. I think it's just time for this. There's never been a better time and a better opportunity of things coming together. And thank you for offering to be that intermediary and for being out front there to talk with these different scholars in different areas and persuade them to come and join together. That's no small feat either.
Well, the more people that participate each month in these conversations, the more responsive the scholars are going to be. If I can say to them, look, I've got 5,000 people that I talk with on the first Saturday of every month, and here's what they're asking. Then they're going to start respecting that. They're going to say, "Oh, look at there's of the 5,000 people, over half of them want this particular question addressed."
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll be able to put that question to them,
yeah,
and then to get their answer and bring it back to our people the next month.
That's a unique opportunity we have, and the numbers will speak.
Yes,
the numbers will speak to them. Speaking of numbers, I know if you're willing to stay with us here, questions and answers that people had submitted. Are you able to address some of those? Or
oh yes, absolutely. I'm delighted. That's what I'm here for.
Okay, well I will remove myself visually from here so that you can talk full screen with people.
Okay. Now, hi Annie, hi technical Annie. I do. I do. I have a copy of it right here. And what I've done is I've circled a number of them. We have probably I don't know, better part of an hour or something to deal with these. But let me take them in some of the order that I've got. Okay. One of the first ones is this. Okay, good. This first one says uh, this is a good start. It says our Pacific Ocean is dead. Our birds and bees are dying off. Our trees are dying. We humans are dying off. It's more and more madness every day from the evil ones, and yet no help from our galactic brothers and sisters. Many of us are on the brink of giving up. It said, lost feelings of hope. We're tired of trying to keep faith while such evil keeps on escalating. For over 10 years, I have been trying to keep the faith without faltering. Now it seems we're on the brink of losing all faith. What is it you can do to give us hope? Okay, now there is a kind of a paradigmatic articulation of the type of despair that the postmodern worldview loves to see. Because if you can get people into that kind of a sense of despair, they can't think of doing anything other than doing whatever it is that gives to them the maximum short-term degree of personal pleasure in the minimizing the amount of pain that they can suffer, because they have no hope. They see nothing on the horizon that gives them hope. Let me answer this question. What we have right now is we have let's take a look at this. What we have is the head of the largest spiritual community on our planet, Francis Jorge Bergoglio, that he is right now been invited into the United States. He was asked to address a joint session of the United States Congress. He addressed the General Assembly of the United Nations. He's had an audience of people that was like millions and millions of people as far as the eye could see in Philadelphia, coming to listen to him, talking about the need for our human family to come together to address in a coordinated way this threat of global climate change. He has identified the proximate causation of this, of being the owners of transnational corporate companies that are basically trying to put one over on you, that are trying to convince you that there is no hope, that there is no real value to you other than what you own and what you can consume and what you can conspicuously display to others of your possessions. Okay, and the head of the largest spiritual community in the entire world is being given this kind of press time. And he's being given this kind of press time by major corporations that own all of the major news media, and he is basically criticizing them right in front of you. Okay, so what I'm suggesting, and you have them calling upon the world to get ready to encounter an entire extraterrestrial civilization and to try to answer these profound philosophical and theological questions, that the answer that you provide, revealing the degree to which you're really worthy of getting access to this additional information that these beings may well have about ultimate issues. Okay, now this is the best possible process, in my opinion, by means of which we can deal with what this questioner opposes as the evil ones. You know, that there are in fact people in our human family, and we're going to have to be accountable for this. When we sit down with representatives of this extraterrestrial civilization, we have to accept ownership of this kind of conduct that is being engaged in by a small portion of our human family. while we stand by allowing it to happen. And while we actually participate in facilitating people like this. You know, it's like being in an entire audience of 500 people, and there's a person standing in front of you with a gun with one bullet in it, and everybody sits there and allows themselves to be cowed by that one person, you know, and nobody dares to stand up and take that person on and confront them and take the gun away from them because there's a risk to you that you might get shot. You know, and so what Francis is calling upon us to do is to be more selfless, to stop being so worried about our own personal selfish interests, and step forward. And all we're asking people to do is to step forward and be willing to be threatened with embarrassment. Oh, someone's going to find out that you're gathering people together in your house every Friday night and every Saturday afternoon, and you're talking about UFO stuff. You know, and oh, I'm going to feel embarrassed about that, so I'm not going to do it. You know, here's the, this fellow's come on television with me in my house and offering to invite me into this, to participate in this conversation, and I'm so worried about being embarrassed in the eyes of my neighbor that I'm not even going to do it. Okay, so what I'm saying is you need to understand what the opportunity is that you're being offered here. Okay, and so that what I'm saying is that the person who asked this question, make sure that you're on the line. Make sure that you call up Kosta and that you talk with him and say, oh, look at, are you guys making this decision? I'm not making this decision. I'm just making recommendations to you as counsel to you. I'm just making a recommendation that you try to deal with this in a concrete way. Do you want to have a gathering at your home every Friday, first Friday of every month? Do you want to, in fact, have a meeting on the first Saturday of every month with me to carry on this discussion? You know, I'm making myself available, but you need to make the decision as to whether you want to do this. And what I'm saying, this process that we have a potential, an opportunity to engage in right now is, in fact, the answer to your question. How do we address evil? In fact, Francis is talking about this being the evil that we have to deal with, that we are dealing with an economic structure on our planet of transnational corporate capitalism that is threatening the destruction of our very planet. And these people are engaged in dominating and controlling the media. They're dominating and controlling the government. You know, they're now financing both major political parties in the United States. They're trying to undermine the greatest experiment in democracy in the history of our human family. And you know it. You know, Francis isn't telling you anything that you don't already know. He's telling you what to do about it, that we can come together and try to understand what the nature of the good news is. That's what Evangelii Gaudium is. It's the joy of sharing the good news, you know, in participating in constructing the good news. The good news is that our human family exists in the context of a huge universe that is just filled with life and overflowing with insight into the answers to some of the questions that we have here in front of us as a human family. Are we entitled to get access to this information? Are we worthy of this information? Are we capable of getting control over this tiny minority? You know, 1% of our entire human family are engaged in this type of evil conduct, of structuring and holding in place this evil structure, this sinful structure of transnational corporate capitalism. Its financial system, its banking systems, its economic systems, its control over the media, its control over our political parties, its control over all the resources of our planet, you know, and they're basically offering us some opportunity to participate in some small portion of the benefits of their system, which is designed, to make no doubt, make no mistake about it, is designed primarily for the purpose of enriching themselves. That's what this is. This is avarice and greed. This is the very thing that all of the prophets talk with us about, that Jesus talks about it, the Buddha talks about it, all of the spiritual beings talk about this. We see what this is, okay? And so that what we're calling people to is what has been termed a spiritual revolution, but it's a revolution of consciousness. It's not a revolution having to do just with the institutional structures of religious organizations. Absolutely not. It's having to do with being called to a genuine spiritual renewal. Okay, that we need to renew our own spirits. We need to strengthen our own spirits so that we dare to call these people out and to disassociate ourselves from them. We can, in fact, engage in all kinds of activities like boycotting every single product that Monsanto produces. We can boycott every single genetically modified organism in the supermarkets. And Francis is calling upon us to do this. And I reiterate, Francis is doing this not because you're supposed to respond in some sort of Pavlovian manner to the guy just who happens to be elected to be the Pope. That's part of the problem. All I'm trying to tell you is that you are being invited by the very structures themselves to help save them from themselves. That's what the call is that you're really hearing here. These people are crying out for our people to mobilize ourselves, to conscientize ourselves, to increase our own spiritual health, and our own physical health, and rise to the occasion to not confront and kill these people who are functioning out of ignorance and darkness and greed and avarice. They're locked into a particular worldview. It's a right-wing, paradigmatic worldview of authoritarianism and reactionaryism. And that what we have to do is we have to shine the light into the world. We have to show to people who are on the brink of despair that there is good news in the world, that there is an alternative to our falling prey to this type of evil. That's what we have to do. Okay, and I'm suggesting to you a very concrete way in which you can do this, that you can participate in these monthly discussions, and you can, in fact, step through the door of potentially being embarrassed to talk to your own family members, your own friends, your own neighbors, to say, look, would you want to come over to my house next Saturday afternoon? And instead of watching, the University of Alabama playing in a football game against, the University of Arkansas, where they're going to try to run into each other and knock each other out if they're lucky. If you want to, instead of doing that, you want to sit down and have this conversation. Hell, tape the game if you must, but participate in this conversation for 3 hours. It'll be from basically 1 o'clock California time to 3 o'clock or to 4 o'clock, a few hours. The length of a football game. Just sacrifice the amount of time for the length of a football game or a baseball game to participate in this conversation. And then hold on, maintain your faith, not in some other person, some other institution, but maintain your own, figure out your own faith, figure out your own source of your own faith. What is it that you do believe in? And I want to assist you in making sure that you can have faith in your own fellow human beings, because ultimately that's who we have to have faith in. We have to have faith in each other, that we can all call each other out to the higher angels of our own nature, and that we can work together to formulate this new paradigm that will in fact entitle us to get access to this information. Okay, so that's the answer to that first question. The second question is how do the philosophical, religious, and scientific global community address the development of higher consciousness to humanity as a whole as a stepping stone to embracing our entrance into the galactic community? Well, that sounds like a loaded one, doesn't it? But that's the big question. And my answer to that is by setting up the exact process that we're talking about here today, by setting up a process where we can actually invite into a centralized place the leading minds and hearts of our entire human civilization and have a focused conversation on this very issue of the fundamental philosophical and theological questions about the nature of our being, of our human species, of our role in the universe, of how, in fact, our spiritual insight of consciousness plays into the developing a set of ethical standards that govern our conduct as a collective human community, and make ourselves worthy of participating as members of a galactic civilization that may well, as I say, be millions of years farther advanced than we are in social ethics, in philosophy. But we need to assist in making ourselves worthy and revealing that worthiness to participate with them. And I say this concrete process, the thing that your lawyer does for you is answers your questions. So what do I do next? What's my next step? Your next step is to do this thing that I'm asking you to do, is to prepare yourself for each first Friday of each month to gather your friends together to talk about this issue, formulate your questions you might have in mind, and then bring them together on Saturday afternoon for a 3-hour period where we have this conversation and tell them, and again, be careful here. You can't just say, oh, look, let me tell you what's absolutely happening. All you can tell them right now is what it is we're planning to do. We're planning to set this thing up at the Graduate Theological Union. We're going to go be talking with Father Funes. We're going to be asking him to participate and helping to chair this. We're going to be inviting these world scholars to come and participate in it. We do have the offer of the funding for both the facilities and the cost for getting this thing to happen. There are certain limited pieces that are in place right now of this. You have to be willing to participate in what they say is sausage making. The people don't want to see how sausages are made. That's a bad image because it's probably not a good idea to be making sausages anymore. But you have to understand how you go about, say, building a chair or building a table. This is how it looks. When you just look at something sitting there, you don't know how it got made. You need to participate in this process. Okay, so let me see. Here's the third question was it says there's been much interpretation of ancient mythology in terms of extraterrestrial presence. While this may be true in some instances, I think that it is equally likely that the poets who composed these stories also made extensive use of the spirit world experience, such as access to other beings in other dimensions. I suspect that much confusion exists to this day between the perception of spiritual beings and that of ETs. Is there some practical means of distinguishing between such beings? Or am I just quibbling over two ends of a particular continuum? Now, there's an interesting question. Let me share with you one of the many people that I have met during the course of the past 40 years that I've been involved in this particular process. There was a young man he was 50 years old. Doesn't sound that young to some of you younger guys. But he went to his very first CE5 experience, where he went out he was actually with Dr. Stephen Greer and maybe 20 other people that were spending a weekend going out into a fairly rural area and with lasers and pointing them up into the sky and trying to attract an extraterrestrial vehicle and have it manifest in such a way that it was at least clear enough to the people in that group that this was in fact some sort of extraterrestrial phenomenon. And this young man, this is about 3 years ago now, he had this experience. And he was up in Northern California, and they went out at about 10 o'clock at night, and they had their little lawn chairs out there, and their little lasers, and they were pointing them up in the sky. And after about an hour of being out there together, all of a sudden this large object loomed up and just came up out of nowhere and expanded into manifestation right off to the left of this group of people. And this particular person, Mark, I'll refer to him as, Mark turned and saw this entity there, and all of the people that were on that side of the circle saw this thing happen. And it was so close that you could actually see the texture of it. He said it was almost like it had scales like on it. It was made out of a very clear material of some sort. And they hollered out to the other people in the other half of the circle, and they all turned and saw this for a few brief seconds, several seconds, and then it just pulled back and just shot off again. And they were all kind of flabbergasted over this thing. And Mark was flabbergasted as well. And Dr. Greer said, well, see, I told you that this can be done. You just need to get your group of people out and sit out under the stars and try to attract them and try to telepathically communicate with them and invite them in, etc. And he said, so they were all very happy. And he said, okay, now let's all go back home, back to the hotel where we all are, a little motel, and get a good night's sleep. So they all went back. And Mark was so excited about what it is that happened, he couldn't sleep. And so after an hour or so, he goes and gets his little folding chair and goes back out to his rent-a-car and drives back out to the spot all by himself. And he puts down his little lawn chair and he sits there waiting for this. And it turns out within a matter of minutes, this phenomenon comes back again. And it manifests in the same way. He can see the texture of the vehicle, and it lights up the whole area, this light, bright green color. And he sits there in the presence of this vehicle, or whatever it was, for like 15 or 20 minutes. And then after a while, it kind of shoots off and goes away. Well, he was totally flabbergasted, he said. And so he folds up his little folding chair and he puts it back in his rent-a-car, drives back to the motel, and he goes to bed and tries to go to sleep. Can't sleep because he's so excited about this, as you might expect. So he sits up on the bed and he starts meditating. And within a matter of a few minutes, he opens his eyes and there is this being standing in the room, he says. Okay, now this is his account to me. I believe that he is completely sincere about this. I believe that he is perfectly convinced that this happened. Now, just as a lawyer, I can say, I wasn't there, so I can't say I'm totally convinced it happened, but I'm totally convinced that he is sincere about this experience that he had. And he said that they're sitting on his bed and this being is standing there in his room, his motel room. And so Mark says to him, well, hello. What are you going to say, right? He says, hello. And the being telepathically communicates to him, asking him, what it is that, what it is he's doing and why he's out there doing this stuff. And so Mark tells him, telepathically, I tells him what he was doing that night. And so the being says to him, look, I happen to be a manifestation of a regular human being who lived here 3,000 years ago. And I was a local tribal chieftain of an indigenous community that lived way down at the southern tip of South America, in a place that is now you would call Tierra del Fuego, way down at the southern tip of South America. And it was just a regular small tribe, and I was their local chief. And I lived for a full length of life. I passed away. And what I discovered is that actually you don't die. Now, your body dies, your human body dies, but I then went into another reincarnation. And I reincarnated as another human being in a more recent time, and that I've reincarnated any number of times as a different human being in different times and places, and basically had no recollection during my physical incarnation of my previous incarnations. But it grew into a time when I became more and more conscious in these reincarnations. I was more and more conscious of my previous lives, and I eventually reincarnated. I died and I reincarnated as a being on the astral plane. And he said there are 3 planes of existence. There's this physical existence here in the material universe of these number of dimensions of physical manifestation, but there's another level of astral existence on a much higher frequency, vibrational frequency. And then I went through a number of reincarnations during that period of time, and then I eventually incarnated as a celestial being, which is the 3rd level of incarnation, of a material incarnation, an astral reincarnation, and a celestial incarnation. And there are a whole spectrum of levels of consciousness inside each of these 3 levels of incarnation. And he said, I am just in the very first stage of incarnation as a celestial being. And it turns out that when you incarnate as in your first manifestation of a celestial being, you can actually return to the planet, he said, where you were originally incarnated as a human being or as a material being. And he said, so this is my first opportunity as a celestial being, as a freshman, if you will, celestial being, to be able to come back to the planet here. And so I've come back and I am horrified at what's happening to the planet, that the planet is being destroyed by all of the waste materials that you're projecting up into the atmosphere and into your environment. You're contaminating your whole environment. He said, and so that I would like to know whether you are, speaking to Mark, are you willing to participate in doing something to remedy this, to stop this from happening to this wonderful planet that you have? Mark is completely, totally flabbergasted, and he says, well, yes, I am. And Mark hadn't been particularly involved in environmental things. He in fact, was a software inventor. And so he said, yes, I'm willing to do that. And so the being then came over around to the side of his bed, and he reached out and took Mark by the elbow, and Mark could feel the being kind of moving all the way into Mark's body. And so he then fully filled in his Mark's body, and Mark could feel him inside his own body communicating with him. And so Mark then sat and meditated for the rest of the night, and he became very excited about all of this. And he spent, now a regular straight up psychiatrist is going to say, oh, this sounds like some sort of a psychiatric breakdown this guy is having. That's what the straight, fourth paradigm scientific logical materialists characterize every mystical experience as, something like that. It's a psychic break of some sort. The bottom line is that Mark there and after started turning his attention toward trying to figure out what he could do to help participate in stemming the tide of global climate change. And he ended up discovering different types of inventions that can be used to increase the production of electrical energy in an efficient and effective way. And he has turned his attention to helping finance that through some of his work in inventing software. And so I tell you that particular story because it is responsive to this particular question of, is there confusion going on the part of our people over celestial beings and astral beings and ETs? Because as it turns out, this particular entity who when he was a chieftain on the planet, in his own language, his name sounds something like Tesbar, is all as he can understand his name to be. And this Tesbar told Mark that Tesbar had reincarnated on the astral plane at a much higher level of vibrational frequency, and even on the material plane at a higher vibrational frequency on other planets, in other solar systems, in other galaxies. Okay? And so that what he is saying, at least, is that there is a continuum of manifestation of those of us who experience ourselves as being individuated nodules of consciousness in the material universe, that we actually materialize in different incarnational forms at differing levels of vibrational frequency, and that we do so in a teleologically evolving manner, so that we're evolving in a higher and higher manifestation of vibrational frequency through the entire material plane, or the spectrum of material manifestation, then up onto the second level of manifestation at a much higher vibrational frequency on the astral plane, and then on an even higher vibrational frequency on the celestial plane. Now, what we discover is that there are all kinds of stories around in our human family about this. The Hindus have all kinds of stories about the different levels of reincarnational vibrational experience that people have, and talk about there being incarnations on different planets, in different worlds. Okay, so one of the issues that we're going to be dealing with in these discussions, if we're successful in getting these world scholars to come together at the New Paradigm Institute in Berkeley, California, we're going to be addressing these particular stories to try to determine how they might be reflections of some sort of objective reality that has to do with the topography of actual reality in the universe. Okay, now there's a whole set of information about what goes on inside the parameters of the physical universe, and what the shape and size of our physical universe is, whether it's the only universe or part of a multi-set of universes. But and then there's this whole question of what actually is going on outside of the boundaries of the material universe that is made up of the sum total of inchoate quantum fields that manifest alternately as a wave of energy or a particle of mass. We'll have some discussions about this as we proceed down through the months. But there's all kinds of information about this around. And so that this particular hypothetical, which is not a hypothetical to Mark, which is very real to Mark, and Mark is convinced that he's being given this information, and it provides us access to at least a particular thesis with regard to the nature of reality, of what's going on, that we can evaluate. We don't have to all of a sudden say, well, just because Mark is completely sincere in saying it, that it's automatically true. That's part of our job. And I'll help give you a little bit of training, lawyer training, and how you evaluate the stories like this. And the fact that I happen to believe that Mark is completely sincere about this is important. You might not, if you were to experience it. The experts that we bring together might or might not. So they will have differing ways of evaluating the credibility of this information. But I don't want you to be just confronted with some kind of general soup of a whole bunch of different theories. That I'm going to be helping you by vetting this stuff. That's what I've done. I was legal counsel to both of the disclosure projects, the one in 2001 with Dr. Stephen Greer, and the one in 2013 with Steve Bassett in Washington, D.C. So part of my self-assumed task and assigned task on occasion is to help vet this information, just like I do to a jury. Is that, I don't just slug everything in front of a jury in some unstructured way. I structure the presentation of the information. I explain to them what my understanding is of what the information is saying, and then I attempt to persuade them that what my interpretation is correct. And that's what I'm going to be doing with you. I'm going to be serving as your counsel on this. And I can share with you the information and edit it for you and present to you what I believe it is saying to us. And then we can discuss together what I think it's saying. Okay, and then what you think about that. Right? So that's an answer to this particular question, is that the answer therefore would be yes, is that yes, there is some significant confusion going on. Because if in fact we as human beings, that is Homo sapiens sapien is a particular material species on this particular planet, that they're saying actually do evolve teleologically or progressively into more and more high frequency beings, and that we actually reincarnate on other planets in a material manifestation, just like this, material beings on other planets. And that some of those extraterrestrial civilizations have developed a technology which is capable of superluminal space travel, faster than light space travel. So they're actually capable of coming here. And so we can actually encounter them potentially in some of these encounters as we evaluate those. Okay, and so those would be experienced as ETs, as extraterrestrial beings, or EBs. So there's different extraterrestrial biological entities. That there's different names that they've been given, but we can encounter those beings. There are beings who reincarnate at a much higher vibrational frequency that does not, in fact, manifest itself in a material form that you can knock on it like this, but it's a higher vibrational frequency, and that those beings would be experienced as astral beings, or what in the kind of vulgar nomenclature is called ghosts. That there are actual incarnations of beings that exist at a higher vibrational frequency that we can encounter, and that they are beings that at one time may have existed as Homo sapiens, material, hard physical contact human beings, but all of this needs to be explored. All of this needs to be explored with an open mind, with an academic rigor and scientific acumen. But we cannot confine ourselves to just the normal tools of material science, of three-dimensional material science, or else we're going to miss out on huge aspects. 95% of reality probably in the physical universe exists in a realm that is not, at least presently, accessible by our scientific technology. So we have to try to probe into that to ascertain what's going on. And we may be able to get a significant amount of additional information about this from other extraterrestrial civilizations who may have developed technology that is able to probe deeper and deeper into this 100% of the reality of the universe that we only have a small percentage of so far. But so the answer to this is yes. There probably has been a significant degree of confusion on the part of the members of our human family, at least during the last 5,000-year period that we have as, quote, recorded history. That dates all the way back to the Sumerians and the ancient people that we have. That there's been confusion between and among the encounters that Homo sapiens have had with different beings of different vibrational frequencies, according to this particular thesis that Mark has articulated, for example, that I've shared with you. So that's the answer to that one. And so then the next one says, Danny, I hope my question is relevant to your discussion. It has come to my realization recently that we human beings are very restricted in our understanding of the bigger universal picture. To understand and interpret our universe, we rely upon our restricted senses, a physical body, limited or underdeveloped consciousness, incomplete mathematical analysis, and a confusion of information, anecdotes, and data. Is this limitation the biggest hurdle to overcome in disclosure, or is it more to do with global or exopolitics? Thank you for your work on this issue. Well, this is similar to what we're talking about. He's asking us, what is the biggest hurdle? What do I believe the biggest hurdle is? Is it that, in fact, we have just a limited understanding, or is it having to do with global or exopolitics? Let's break that into three parts. I've addressed the first one. I think that a very substantial portion of the limitation of our understanding of reality is predicated upon our limited technological developments and our limited consciousness at this stage. That's part one. But I do believe that there is some portion of global politics that plays in this. And that is that I do believe that the data is accurate. That has been, for example, Richard Dolan has performed an extraordinarily valuable service to our entire community, our entire human community, by gathering together all kinds of the information that's been gathered through the Freedom of Information Act to extract previously classified government documents from the government institutions and assemble them to show that there has been a conscious and intentional and grossly unconstitutional policy and procedure on the part of our government structures to lie about and to conceal actual data that has been garnered by various institutions about the existence of extraterrestrial intelligence and the other dimensions of reality that they're not sharing with us because of the global politics. And the global politics, as Francis has pointed out, is presently dominated by the sub rosa, behind-the-scenes control of a very limited percentage of our human family. Just 1% of the human family that owns and controls, as much as the poorest 90% of people on the entire planet. That they, for their own interests, are concealing information to try to maintain their unilateral control over everything, and they're refusing to disclose this. There are a couple other questions that were asked about the secret space program. Are these people actually participating in some secret space program for the benefit of the wealthiest 1% that's going to allow them to survive any kind of catastrophe on our planet, et cetera? I'll address that later. But the bottom line is there is a very real factor of the global politics here on our planet that is playing into limiting our access to a lot of this information, which I'm personally convinced exists in the hands of government circles. And so that is an answer. And I would say that they are using the first factor, our limited consciousness and our limited technology, to disguise and conceal this information from us, because this 1% of the people in the world has access to a much more highly developed technology than we're informed they have. I mean, they were doing experiments with anti-gravitation machinery and fast superluminal travel and teleportation and all of those kind of things. They were doing experiments on this back in the 1950s, and it was actually, you could find information about it in Popular Mechanics magazine, and it's now being completely concealed. All of a sudden went dead, along about 1957, 58, just went dead. And all of a sudden they stopped talking about this. So I'm convinced that there's a much more sophisticated level of technology that's available for the military industrial complex and the kind of elite ruling circles than is being shared with the rest of the people of the world. And so that number two question about the role that is played by global politics here on our planet, or we call them terrestrial politics, is in fact limiting our access to the information. This brings us to the third portion of the question. To what degree are exopolitics playing in limiting the amount of information we have about this? And by exopolitics, the questioner means galactic politics, politics that exist outside of our planet. To state the obvious, it's perfectly clear that if in fact an extraterrestrial civilization exists inside our galaxy, or otherwise in the universe, and has technological access to coming to our planet and lowering its vibrational frequency down to a level where it can actually be perceived by us in the material realm, that may be the explanation for some of these sightings. That it's perfectly clear that they have the capacity, if they chose to do so, to, quote, land on the White House lawn, or land in the middle of a field somewhere and hold a press conference. It's perfectly clear that there is a decision that is being made at the exopolitical level, the extraterrestrial political level, not to do that. And one can speculate about what the reasons for that are, that they believe us to be of such a low level of sophistication and consciousness that we would try to attack them, or that we would, worship them, and whatever all the different options are. That whatever our speculation might be about what their motive is, I believe that it's evident that if they exist, and if they have the technology to be able to come here, and they're choosing not to reveal themselves publicly, then obviously there are some considerations for why they're doing that. And since I believe that it's clear they do exist, and I personally believe, based on the evidence that I've seen, that some of them are actually coming here, and that at least some of the instances of the UFO sightings and the ET direct contact information is accurate. That they're choosing not to just land on the White House lawn. But let's be clear about something. They are, in fact, there's an old saying in law, is that every person has to be assumed to intend the logical consequences of their own actions. And so that one has to assume that they are intending to have people recognize them, and to know that they're here, and to talk with their neighbors about it, and to try to share the information with government circles. That one has to assume that what's happening is being intentionally facilitated by these extraterrestrial beings. So there is some process by means of which they are feathering in to the consciousness of our human family, their existence, and the fact that they're coming here, etc. Which brings us, reflect back into the second part of our question, the global politics. Randy Kopang will tell you, you'll all become familiar with Randy during our monthly meetings. Randy is another great resource for our whole community, just like Richard Dolan is, and just like Stephen Greer is with the CE5 experiences, just like Mark is, and others. We'll all become familiar with each other more and more in any monthly meetings if you choose to do that. That Randy Kopang has pointed out, I think convincingly, and he's in the process of writing a book about this, is that you need to understand that the amount of information that's coming out, in fact, about the existence of extraterrestrial beings on our planet and UFOs, etc., is being actively participated in by official government circles. They are, in fact, allowing certain officials to speak out. The chief investigator for the FAA, full bird colonels and general officers of the United States Air Force are speaking out, and they're not being sanctioned and for this. People are writing books about it, and nothing's happening to them. There are meetings that are being held by government officials reaching out to people that are involved in the UFO community and sharing information with them. And they're pretending they're behind the scenes, and they're doing this sort of clandestinely, but it's perfectly evident that they're doing it with some sort of authorization. So that there are people both inside our global politics and inside the exopolitics that are intentionally engaging in allowing information to dribble out piece by piece to us, and they're watching to see how we react to it. In how we process this and how responsible we are in our response to it. So that I believe that all those things are going on. And the questioner asked, do I believe that a role is played in our limited understanding of this whole phenomenon by our limited consciousness? Yes. By our limited state of technology? Yes. By our terrestrial global politics? Yes. By the exopolitics of the extraterrestrial beings? Yes. All of those things are factoring in to keeping us from knowing any more about it than we do. But as I pointed out at the end of my comments here, there is also a process by means of which they are consciously providing information to us. And the question is, how good are we at choreographing all of that and correlating it and looking at it and evaluating it and making determinations as to what's going on about this? You know, what you might ask yourself, what percentage of your entire time in any given month is devoted to this particular topic? You know, what, 1%? You know, some of you may be as high as 10%. You know, fine. You know, that, you know, if that's the degree of importance you want to attach to this particular thing, the information that you'll get about it and your level of understanding of it will be commensurate with that. But if you want to spend more time directing your attention to it, your level of understanding of this is going to increase considerably. So what I'm suggesting to you is that you spend your Friday evening with your friends, gather together, talking about what the most recent developments are about all this, and then you bring them together on Saturday afternoon, and we have our meetings together. So that'll be 3 to 6 hours every month that you spend on it, which is probably more than you spend now. Okay, so then you'll increase this, and as you get more and more information about this, you may choose to spend more and more time about this. And so then you would end up volunteering to participate with ET Let's Talk, to become part of their staff. You know, you offer to become part of, you know, set up your own staff to do things. You know, and you will eventually, I mean, all of us in our human family are going to come to a point in the comparatively near future where we're going to have to spend a great deal more of our time and attention on this particular issue. That's exactly what Father Funes and the people are saying. You know, that we don't want to get sideswiped by this at the point where, you know, we're completely ignorant of the whole thing when all of a sudden it happens, because it ain't going to happen as long as we stay that ignorant. You know, so that, as I point out, that our increasing our knowledge and consciousness of this whole issue is going to play a major role in how rapidly this, quote, disclosure process takes place. So there's this entire existential dimension to this process, and it's a symbiotic process that we're engaged in here. The more time and attention we pay to this, the more accelerated the discovery in this disclosure is going to be. Okay, so now we see just, I guess, one final question in time, because I don't want to make you stay here longer than you have to. Oh, here comes, we got to close with one of these. It says, Mr. Sheehan, as stated in your biography, you've helped to expose injustice, protect fundamental human rights, and elucidate a compelling vision for the future of our human family in many fields. Please inform us of what we can expect, of when we can expect justice from the criminal actions of our United States government, of our Catholic Church and the Jesuit order, and what he refers to as the Space Command, in conjunction with extraterrestrial civilizations for human trafficking and genocide. Okay, so and we come full circle. We come full circle in our questions that have been asked here, some of them, from the kind of opening question filled with despair and the edge of despair at the force of evil in our world. And we come with a closing question, which the person is basically legitimately challenging the dark side of the institutions of our human family, our government circles, the Catholic Church, the Jesuit order, and what he refers to as the Space Command, that would be the extraterrestrials. You know, how can, if they have been allowing the degree of evil that goes on in the world, genocide, and what was that? Genocide and human trafficking that goes on in the world, how can you trust them? My whole message to you is don't trust them. Don't trust them. Pick up the ball yourself. Don't sit back and trust these people to do the job for you. That we're offering you the opportunity to do the job yourself, for yourself, to watch how it's done, to watch how the sausage making takes place, how the chair is built. Participate in these conversations that we're inviting you to participate in. I'm going to be bringing in scholars and people from around the world to the degree to which they agree to be revealed to you who they are. I'll share with you who they are. You can make your own evaluations. I'm obviously not going to be inviting people in that I think are bad guys or are ringers. I will in fact be inviting people to the table who in fact disagree with us on some of these things. In order to sharpen the focus of this, you have to have people at the table who are engaged in the process, who tell you that you're full of it. A particular expert sits down and lays out their particular theory. Someone's going to sit there and say, I think you're totally wrong, and let me point out why. And then I'm going to turn to them and say, okay, what do you think is true about all of this? Okay. Now I don't want these discussions to be in terms of a dialectic, some kind of court case, where we're having two sides fight each other and be artificially dialectical. That's not what I'm going to do. I want it to be a circle discussion where people share their views and try to have an elevated conversation, so that out of the circle will arise a collective insight that no one of the individuals would have been able to come to by themselves. That's what we're trying to do here. So this is a legitimate challenge from this particular questioner who is familiar with the dark side and the dark activities of these particular human institutions. And that's why you cannot rely upon these institutions to do this task for us, that we need to undertake the task ourselves. Now, he hasn't asked it, but you could ask an additional question about, well, what about the reactions that these dark forces may have to this? Aren't they going to try to stop us? Aren't they going to try to disrupt us? In fact, you could hear a little bit of this right at the beginning of you guys gathering together, where Kosta was saying, "Oh, someone may be blocking us, may be interfering with us." That wasn't happening. You see, I mean, we were messed up here on this end. That I'm using Sarah's computer here to get this, and it has a different access code than the other ones. That's all that is. And what it is, you need to be able to distinguish things that are not part of a conspiracy in order to be able to recognize those things that are. And so that it's quite true that the same forces of darkness that abide inside the various institutions of our human family, that have in fact struggled for so long to keep secret this information, are going to continue to do so. But they are to some degree also participating, these flawed institutions, in attempting to let some of this information out. So our job is to do our job so that they're going to feel compelled to accelerate the levels at which they're releasing this information, to the extent to which they guard some of it. But we aren't going to be relying upon, we're not here just to try to stimulate them to accelerate the levels and rates at which they release secret information to us. That's not what we're doing. We're here to get the information ourselves, okay? And they can respond any way they choose to. They can either accelerate the release of information to us or not. It doesn't make any difference to me. I never rely upon the prosecution or the bad guys in any case I've ever done to be the ones to give me the information that I'm presenting to the jury. We have to get that information ourselves, and we are capable of doing so. Be assured of that we can get this information, and if you participate with us, okay? And you facilitate ET Let's Talk with minor contributions so that they can help increase their staff and only to serve you, only to facilitate you better, so that they can process more questions and get these questions brought up. Potentially, if I'm successful in persuading the people that are involved in our New Paradigm Institute discussions at the Graduate Theological Union at Berkeley, the University of California, that we'll be able to share more and more of that information with you through better and better technology. Okay, So that's our discussion for this Saturday. Here we are in the middle of October. I'm flying out tomorrow morning to go meet with Father Funes. I'm going to be spending 10 days in Rome, talking with other people there. I'm going to be going back up to Berkeley to meet with my staff up there. We're already on site, starting to set up the facilities for us to have these conversations. We've got a list of people that we're going to be inviting to the first discussions prepared already that I'm going to be sharing with Father Funes. So this process is underway right now. And so I've dealt with some of these. What we hopefully will be able to do is be able to figure out how to be more interactive with you, so that you, in front of your computers out around the country, can ask your questions of us live. And if there's an adequate staff at ET Let's Talk, they can on their end be filtering those more or less like at a live radio television show, where people can call in and actually ask the questions, like on the Larry King show that they used to do. But instead of having it just be audio, you can have video. So, take care. If you're standing in your birthday suit, don't come on television asking questions. And so that there will be a certain screening of the questions. If you provide the kind of technology to ET Let's Talk that they can use, they will screen those to make sure that we have sound and responsible process. And you can be assured, based on my reputation, that there's not going to be any kind of censoring or avoiding the tough questions or avoiding the critical questions or even the criticisms. We're going to that the vibrant nature of this inquiry is going to be one of its key features, to make sure that it's totally credible and real, because we need to get answers to these profound philosophical and theological questions in order to answer the public policy questions that we need to organize around, in order to change our governmental structures, change our economic structures, change our trajectory with regard to global climate change. These are all things we need to be addressing, because in the bottom line, this is a very practical undertaking on behalf of our human family to help in our own salvation. Okay, so that's my wrap for the day. I imagine Kosta and the guys will come back on and
Yes.
Sign off.
Hi, Danny. Yes, back on. Thank you for this 3+ hours of incredible information, and even more so, really inspiration and good legal advice on what to do next. You've been a good lawyer for us, giving us the practical things very clearly that we can do. And so I want to thank you so much for spending the time, especially on the eve of such a long trip, to get us started with this. And I really look forward to what's going to come out of this, because you have challenged and instructed our ET Let's Talk family to step up and join in on this. And it's an incredible opportunity that nobody else is really getting, and that I could have only dreamed of months ago. But here it is. Thank you for putting it forward, and I hope that those of you who are in our community now will respond with participation. Yes, we need financial support too. Technology is not cheap to do what we really think we can do with this as it gets bigger and bigger, and that's what we want it to do, is get bigger and bigger. So thank you for that invitation. I invite everyone else to stay with us. I will be sending out a follow-up email about the next steps as soon as we get together and figure out what those are. But we will be engaging you in the community here and informing you. And pretty soon, I hope, scheduling with Danny the first of the webinars that he's talking about, where we can all start the conversation going. This is going to be incredible fun, and also make us feel like we're doing something. There's nothing like an antidote of being active to taking care of depression and loneliness and feeling futile. We are going to be active, and I appreciate all of you that are going to step up to do that. So
thank you.
We are the ones we've been waiting for. Thank you, everybody, and we'll be talking soon. Thank you again, Dan.
Next time, gang.
Thank you, Annie, for all your help, and Patty. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, gang.